Hey there, welcome back to Hearthside Heartbreak. I've put together a bunch of new stories to help you relax and enjoy your evening. I'd love to connect with you, so let me know where you're listening from and what time it is right now in the comments below. Please subscribe to the channel if you haven't already. It honestly means a lot to me. Now find your coziest spot and let's start with the first story.
Story 1. The first thing I noticed about my mom's new house was the noise. It wasn't the warm, chaotic sound of a family. It was the sharp, percussive bang of weights hitting the floor in the garage, the constant blare of sports commentary from the living room TV, and the guttural laughter that always seemed to be at someone's expense. It was the sound of Joe and his two sons, Mark and Kevin. A symphony of testosterone. My room was my only sanctuary. I sat hunched over my drawing tablet, the clean lines of a character design, a welcome relief from the chaos downstairs. The headphones over my ears were blasting a playlist my friend Maya made for me, but I could still feel the house vibrating every time one of the hulks downstairs slammed a door. A soft knock, then the door creaked open without waiting for a reply. My mom. She was holding 2 mugs of tea apiece, offering I'd learned to be wary of. "Hey honey," she said, her smile not quite reaching her eyes. "Working on your art?" "Yeah," I said, not looking up. I nudged a slider with my stylus, deepening a shadow under a jawline. She set a mug on the corner of my desk, dangerously close to a pile of sketches. "That's nice. Joe was just saying he hasn't seen you all day." "Here we go." I pulled off my headphones. "I've been busy." "Well, he wants to spend some time with you. He thinks it would be a good idea for him to take you for a drive later. For some practice." My whole body went rigid. "I don't need practice. Dad and Brian are teaching me. We went out last weekend." Her smile tightened. "I know, sweetie. But this is for bonding. Joe feels like you're shutting him out. He just wants to connect." "Connect, Mom." His idea of connecting is asking me if I got a girlfriend yet every 5 minutes and then telling Kevin to put me in a headlock. "We have nothing in common." "That's not true," she said, her voice taking on that defensive edge. "He's trying, Jacob. You could try a little too. It's just a driving lesson." "It's never just anything with him," I muttered. I thought of last week when my friends Maya and Liam came over. Joe had watched them from the kitchen, arms crossed over his chest, a deep scowl on his face. Liam has his nails painted black and Maya has a side shave. After they left, Joe had clapped me on the shoulder and said loud enough for the whole house to hear, "You need some new friends, kid. Ones that play ball, not dress up." My mom had just busied herself with the dishes, pretending she hadn't heard. She was always pretending. "Please, Jacob," she said now, her voice softening into a weapon of guilt. "For me, just an hour." I looked from her pleading face to my tablet screen at the art she called a nice little hobby. My dad and Brian had already framed 2 of my pieces and hung them in their living room. They called me an artist. Joe called me. Well, he didn't say the word, not directly, but it hung in the air every time he looked at me. "Fine," I sighed the word, tasting like defeat. 1 hour. Her face flooded with relief. "Thank you. See, it'll be fun." It was not fun. The second I got into the passenger seat of Joe's oversized pickup truck, the air became thick and hard to breathe. The cab smelled like old coffee and artificial pine tree air fresheners. He waited until I'd buckled my seatbelt before speaking. "All right. Let's see what your father's taught you." The way he said times father times was laced with something bitter. I drove us out of the neighborhood, my hands clenched at 10 and 2. Every move I made was met with a grunt or a sharp correction. "You're riding the clutch. Don't brake so hard." You trying to give me whiplash? Take that turn wider. This isn't a go-kart. I just nodded, my jaw tight, focusing on the road. We drove in tense silence for 10 minutes before he couldn't take it anymore. You know your mom worries about you. He started, his voice a low grumble. I'm fine, I said. No, you're not. All that time in your room with the drawings, hanging out with those theatrical friends of yours. That's not normal for a 19-year-old guy. I gripped the steering wheel harder. My friends are fine. Are they? He laughed, a short, ugly sound. Look, I know your dad and his partner think it's all just peachy. But out here in the real world, men are men. You gotta be strong. You can't be soft. The word hung in the air between us. Soft. It was his favorite euphemism. I'm just saying, he continued, his voice rising. I'm not gonna stand by and watch you end up like them. A sissy. That's why I'm doing this. That's why I'm trying to get you to play sports, to get out there. Someone's gotta teach you how to be a man. That was it. The world went quiet. The hum of the engine, the rumble of the tires on asphalt, it all faded away. All I could hear was that one sentence replaying in my head. Someone's gotta teach you how to be a man. My dad, who taught me how to be kind. Brian, who taught me how to cook and laugh at myself. They weren't men. My foot pressed a little harder on the gas. The speedometer needle crept past 60. Whoa. Slow down, hotshot, Joe barked, grabbing the dashboard. What's gotten into you? I didn't answer. I just kept driving, my vision narrowing to a tunnel. I saw the sign for the interstate up ahead. Home was to the right. I swung the truck left onto the on-ramp. What the hell are you doing? This is the wrong way, Joe yelled. You wanted to drive, we're driving, I said, my voice eerily calm. I pushed the truck up to 75, weaving through traffic with a precision that surprised even me. Joe was white-knuckling the door handle, his face a mask of fury and fear. For 30 minutes, I just drove. I didn't know where I was going. I just knew it was away. Finally, the fuel light blinked on. An exit with a gas station sign appeared like a miracle. I took it, pulling into a brightly lit generic station in a town I didn't recognize. I brought the truck to a smooth stop next to a pump. Joe let out a shaky breath. He turned to me, his face red with anger. You got a goddamn death wish. What was that? I just stared straight ahead, my hands still locked on the wheel. Unbelievable, he spat. He unbuckled his seatbelt with a vicious tug. I'm paying inside. Do not move this truck. Do you understand me? I gave a single slow nod. He slammed the door and stomped toward the convenience store, muttering curses under his breath. I watched him go. I sat there in the driver's seat, the engine humming quietly, the keys still in the ignition. The fluorescent lights of the gas station canopy hummed above me. I looked at the empty passenger seat. Then I looked at my own reflection in the rearview mirror. My eyes were clear. Someone's got to teach you how to be a man. Joe's words echoed in the sudden silence of the truck. Man up times, he'd told me. Okay. I reached down, my hand steady. I shifted the gear selector from park to drive. My foot moved from the brake to the accelerator. The truck lurched forward. Joe, just reaching the door to the store, turned at the sound. His eyes went wide as he saw the truck rolling away from the pump. He started yelling, waving his arms, but his voice was lost behind the glass. I pressed the gas, pulled out of the station, and merged back onto the empty road, leaving him standing there, a shrinking silhouette under the harsh buzzing lights. The phone started buzzing before I was even 2 miles away. The screen lit up with Joe's name and a picture of him holding a ridiculously large fish. I pressed the volume down button on the side of the steering wheel, silencing it. It buzzed again a minute later, and again. The screen became a strobe light of his anger flashing in the dark cab of his stupid truck. I ignored it. I pulled up the GPS on my phone, plugged in my mom's address, and set it on the passenger seat where he'd been sitting. The calm digital voice of the navigation lady was a welcome replacement for his gravelly one. For the 30-minute drive home, I listened to the music on my phone through the truck speakers. Something loud and angry and cathartic. I sang along, my voice cracking, a strange mix of rage and relief coursing through me. I drove perfectly. No hard braking. No wide turns. I drove like my dad and Brian taught me. When I pulled into the driveway, I didn't try to hide the truck. I parked it right where he always did, turned it off, and left the keys in the ignition. I walked into the house and straight past my mom, who was in the kitchen. "Jacob, I thought you two were going for another hour. Is Joe?" "He's fine," I said, not breaking my stride, as I took the stairs 2 at a time. In my room, I pulled my biggest duffel bag out of the closet and started throwing things into it. T-shirts, jeans, my laptop, my drawing tablet, and stylus. The essentials. I worked with a cold efficiency, my hands moving on autopilot. My phone continued its frantic buzzing on my desk. Now it was a mix of calls from Joe and text from my mom. Asterisk. "Where are you? Joe just called me." Asterisk. Asterisk. "He said you left him at a gas station." "Jacob, this isn't funny." Asterisk. Asterisk. "Answer your phone right now." Asterisk. I zipped the bag shut just as I heard the front door slam open downstairs. "Jacob," the roar shook the whole house. It wasn't a question. It was a declaration of war. I slung the bag over my shoulder and walked out of my room, meeting him at the top of the stairs. His face was blotchy and red, his chest heaving. My mom was right behind him, looking pale and terrified. "What the hell is wrong with you?" he bellowed, pointing a thick finger at me. "You think that was funny? Leaving me stranded in the middle of nowhere." I started down the stairs slowly, my bag thumping against my back with each step. "You told me to man up," I said, my voice quiet but clear. "I did. I made a decision and I drove home." "That's not manning up, you little psycho." That's... He sputtered, searching for a word big enough for his rage. My mom rushed forward, grabbing his arm. "Joe, calm down. Let's just talk about this." She turned her frantic eyes on me. "Jacob, what were you thinking? You could have been arrested." Joe had to get an Uber. I reached the bottom of the stairs and stood in front of them, right in the center of the entryway. I was a foot shorter than Joe and 100 pounds lighter, but I didn't feel small. He told me he wasn't going to stand by and watch me end up a sissy like Dad and Brian, I said, looking directly at my mom. I watched for a flicker of understanding, of maternal protection. I saw nothing. Her face just crumpled in exasperation. "Oh, Jacob, you can't take things so literally. He's just... You know how he is. He's gruff. He was trying to connect with you. By calling my dad a sissy, I asked, my voice dangerously low. You're twisting his words, she insisted, her voice rising. He's worried about you. And this is how you repay him. By stealing his truck and abandoning him. You are grounded. You're not going anywhere, you're not seeing anyone. You can give me your phone right now. She held out her hand, her expression hard and final. She wasn't pretending anymore. She was choosing. She had chosen. I looked from her outstretched hand to Joe's smug, triumphant face. He'd won. He had his ally. I just shook my head. No. I walked past them toward the front door. Where do you think you're going? Joe barked, stepping in my way. I pulled my phone from my pocket, unlocked it, and hit a number on my favorites list. It rang once before he picked up. Hey, what's up? Can you come get me? I asked, my voice steady. I never took my eyes off Joe. I'm at Mom's. I need to leave. Yeah. Of course. Everything okay? Not really. I'll explain when you get here. On my way. 10 minutes. I hung up and slipped the phone back into my pocket. My brother is coming to get me. My mom's face fell. What, Jacob? Don't be so dramatic. You're not leaving. I am, I said. I turned my back on them, opened the front door, and walked outside, letting it close softly behind me. I didn't slam it. I sat down on the top step of the porch, placed my duffel bag beside me, and waited. I could hear them arguing inside, their voices muffled and angry. I didn't care. The cool night air felt good on my face. A car pulled into the driveway a few minutes later, its headlights washing over me. My brother got out, his expression a mixture of concern and confusion. He looked at my bag. You weren't kidding. Nope, I said, standing up and grabbing it. What happened? He asked as I threw the bag in his backseat. I'll tell you in the car. I got in, shut the door, and buckled my seatbelt. As we reversed out of the driveway, the front door opened. My mom stood there, silhouetted in the light of the house. She was holding her phone, probably about to call me again. I didn't wave. I just watched her get smaller and smaller until my brother turned the corner and she was gone. My phone buzzed in my pocket. A text from her. Then a call. I powered it off completely and dropped it into the cup holder. The silence in the car was heavy for a moment. So my brother said, glancing over at me. Dad's place. I leaned my head against the cool glass of the window, watching the streetlights slide by. For the first time all day, I felt like I could breathe. Yeah, I said. Home. Story 2. We always called ourselves a close-knit family. It's a nice phrase, isn't it? Sounds warm. What it really means is that we're all up in each other's business all the time. There are no secrets, only delays and the inevitable group text explosion. So when my brother Robert first brought Rebecca home for Sunday dinner, the jury was in. Before she'd even taken her coat off. She was loud. Not just her voice, which had a laugh that could shatter glass, but everything about her. Her dress was a little too tight. Her lipstick a little too red. She told a story about getting a flat tire that involved more curse words than I'd heard my mother use in her entire life. My older sister Amy just sat there smiling, a smile so tight It looked painful, her fork frozen over a piece of roast chicken. After they left, the debrief began. "Well," Amy said, draining her wine glass. "She's energetic. She's crude." Amy, my mother's side, already gathering plates. That story was completely inappropriate for the dinner table. Her background is just very different from ours, dear. My father added his classic diplomatic way of saying he didn't approve. I stayed quiet mostly. But I agreed. Robert had always been the quiet one, the steady one. Rebecca was a firecracker, and I worried he was going to get burned. I figured it was a phase, a rebellion. He'd get it out of his system and find someone more suitable, someone who understood the unspoken rules of a family like ours. We all thought that. We tolerated Rebecca because we were sure she was temporary. But months bled into a year. The phase was looking suspiciously permanent. Robert started missing Sunday dinners. First, it was an excuse about work, then a friend's birthday. We all knew he was with her. The pressure started to mount, mostly from Amy, who appointed herself the family enforcer. "Have you talked to him?" she'd ask me on the phone at least once a week. "Does he not see how embarrassing she is? Did you know she posted a picture of them on vacation and she was wearing a thong bikini?" A times thong times Brian. My colleagues can see that. "I'll talk to him, Amy." I'd say, just to get her off the phone. And I did. I tried to be the good brother, the reasonable one. I'd catch him for a beer, just the two of us. "Look, Rob," I said one night, swirling my drink. "You know, I just want you to be happy. But you have to admit Rebecca isn't exactly subtle. The way she dresses, the way she talks. It's a lot for Mom and Dad." Robert's jaw tightened. "She's a good person, Brian. She's fun. She makes me happy. Isn't that enough?" "Of course. But family is important too. You can't just pretend our values don't matter. It's about respect." "Respect?" He let out a short, bitter laugh. "You mean conformity? You mean not doing anything that might make Amy clutch her pearls?" That stung because it was partly true. But he was missing the point. It wasn't about being snobs. It was about protecting our family's reputation. About maintaining a certain standard. Rebecca didn't just fail to meet that standard. She took a sledgehammer to it. The breaking point for me was Christmas. The whole extended family gets together at my parents' house every year. It's a command performance. A few weeks before, Robert called me. "Hey, I need a favor," he said, his voice low. "I told Mom and Dad I'm going to Europe with some friends over the holidays." "Europe? What friends?" I asked. There was a long pause. It's not friends. I'm going to spend Christmas with Rebecca's family. In Ohio." I felt a cold knot form in my stomach. Ohio. He was lying to our parents to go to Ohio for times her asterisk. "Rob, you can't do that," I said. "Just tell them the truth." "Are you kidding me?" After the lecture Amy gave me last week about Rebecca's lack of decorum, they'd have a fit. It would ruin Christmas. This is just easier, Brian. Please, just back me up. He sounded desperate. Against my better judgment, I agreed. I hated lying to my parents, but I hated the idea of the inevitable family meltdown even more. So I played along. I listened to my mom talk about how wonderful it was that Robert was getting to see Europe, how cultured he was becoming. I nodded and smiled while feeling like a complete fraud. Amy, of course, was suspicious from the start. She'd cross-examined me, trying to poke holes in the story. Which friends is he going with again? Did he say which cities they're visiting? The whole thing felt dirty. He was building a secret life, walling us out and letting Rebecca in. It wasn't just about her anymore. It was about his dishonesty. His choice to deceive us rather than face us. It felt like a betrayal. After the holidays, things were tense. Robert was distant. The few times we did talk, it was stilted and awkward. The lie hung in the air between us. The rest of the family felt it too. There was a chill that had nothing to do with the winter weather. Then 2 weeks ago, Robert sent a message to the family group chat, me, him, Amy, and our younger sister Krista. Robert, hey. Can we all hop on a group call? Sunday evening. Got something I want to talk to you all about. Amy responded instantly. Amy. Is everything okay? Robert, everything's great. Just want to catch up. My phone buzzed with a private text from Amy a second later. Amy, it's about her. I know it is. He's going to say they're moving in together. I typed back. Me probably. Just stay calm. Let him talk. Amy, calm, he's been lying to us for months. He's choosing that trashy woman over his own family. I will not be calm. I didn't respond. For the rest of the week, a sense of dread built in my chest. This wasn't just a catch-up. This was a reckoning. Sunday evening rolled around, and I poured myself a stiff whiskey, setting the glass down next to my laptop. My screen lit up. A video call notification. It was from Robert. My stomach clenched. I took a deep breath, a gulp of whiskey, and clicked accept. Amy's face, red and contorted with fury, vanished from my screen, replaced by the generic gray icon of a dropped call. The silence she left behind was heavy charged. It was just me and Robert, now his face pale and pixelated in the glow of his monitor. He looked smaller than I'd ever seen him, his shoulders slumped. He took a shaky breath. Brian, he said. His voice quiet, vulnerable. You still there? I'm here, I said. My own voice sounded flat, distant. The whiskey wasn't helping. Look, I know Amy's pissed. She'll come around. She always does. He was trying to convince himself, not me. But what do you think I was going to tell Mom and Dad at the annual garden party next month? The whole family will be there. I thought, maybe if everyone is there, they'll have to be civil about it. I stared at him. The naivety of it was staggering. He wanted to drop this bomb in the middle of my mother's prized petunias in front of 60 of their closest friends and business associates. You want my advice? I asked, swirling the amber liquid in my glass. Yes, Brian. That's why I called. I need my brother. The words should have meant something. They should have landed. But all I felt was a cold, hard annoyance. He hadn't consulted us. He hadn't thought about the consequences. He hadn't considered anyone but himself and Rebecca. My advice is don't, I said, the words coming out colder than I intended. Do not announce your engagement at that party. Robert recoiled as if I'd slapped him. What? Why not? Because it would cause a significant embarrassment for Mom and Dad. For all of us. The word hung in the air between our two little video windows. Embarrassment. His face hardened, the vulnerability vanishing, replaced by a familiar defensive anger. Embarrassment. Marrying the woman I love is in times embarrassment times to you. Don't be dramatic, Rob. You know exactly what I mean. Announcing it like that, in public with her standing there, it's forcing their hand. It's an ambush. You can't do that to them. An ambush. I'm telling my family that I'm happy. His voice cracked with a mixture of disbelief and hurt. I thought out of everyone you would get it. I thought you'd at least have my back. A wave of frustration washed over me. He just wasn't getting it. He was so lost in his little love story he couldn't see the bigger picture. Someone has to give you a reality check. Robert, I said, my tone sharpening. You can't just drop a bomb like this and expect everyone to throw you a parade. You lied about Christmas. You've been hiding your relationship for months. And now you expect us to just smile and applaud while you detonate the family's reputation at their biggest social event of the year. Wake up. He just stared at me, his mouth slightly open. The silence stretched. I saw something in his eyes shut off a light going out. He had come to me for a lifeline, and I had handed him an anchor. I see, he said finally, his voice devoid of all emotion. Yeah. Okay. Thanks for the reality check, Brian. It's been illuminating. He ended the call. My screen went blank. I was alone in my quiet apartment, the only sound the clinking of ice in my glass. I finished the whiskey in one long swallow, the burn doing nothing to quell the knot in my stomach. I told myself it was for his own good. He was being reckless. I was being the responsible older brother. But the image of his face, that flicker of hope extinguishing in his eyes, wouldn't leave my mind. I needed to talk to someone who would understand. Not Amy, she'd just pour gasoline on the fire. I scrolled through my contacts and hit the call button for Krista. She answered on the second ring. Let me guess, she said, her voice calm and even. Apocalypse, Amy. You have no idea, I sighed, pacing around my living room. And Robert? He's engaged to her. To Rebecca. There was a pause. I could hear the faint sound of a television in the background on her end. Wow, she said, drawing the word out. Engaged. So it's official. He wanted to announce it at Mom and Dad's garden party. Krista let out a low whistle. Oof. Bad move. That's what I told him. I said it would be a huge embarrassment for them. Relief washed over me. See, I wasn't the villain. Krista the measured won the family's Switzerland. She got it. Well, you're not wrong, she said. Announcing it there feels deliberate. Like he's trying to force their hand, make a scene. It's a power play. Exactly. Thank you. He just doesn't see it. He sees what he wants to see, Krista said. But Brian, you know what this means, right? You know what Dad is going to do. I stopped pacing. What do you mean? The money, she said simply. He'll cut him off. The trust fund, the annual supplement, any help with the down payment for a house. It'll all be gone. Dad's not going to finance a life with someone he thinks is a gold-digging nightmare. The thought was so obvious I was angry I hadn't considered it myself. It was the family's ultimate weapon. The final backstop against any decision they deemed unacceptable. He wouldn't, I said, but the words sounded weak even to my own ears. He absolutely would, Krista countered. And honestly, maybe it's a good thing, A test? A test. Yeah. To see if she's really in it for him or for the lifestyle. If she sticks around after Dad turns off the tap, then maybe Robert is right about her. If she bolts, well, he dodged a bullet. She framed it so pragmatically, so logically. It wasn't a punishment. It was a test of character. A necessary evil to protect my brother from a manipulative woman. It was a perfect, clean narrative. One where we weren't the bad guys. My hands were tied. I couldn't stop what was coming. All I could do was try to manage it. You're right, I said, my resolve hardening. He needs to know that's on the table before he does anything stupid. Good luck being the one to tell him, Krista said. There was no sympathy in her voice, just a statement of fact. We hung up a few minutes later. I stood in the middle of my living room, the empty whiskey glass still in my hand. My role was clear now. I wasn't betraying my brother. I was protecting him. From himself, from her, from the inevitable fallout he was too blind to see coming. I was the only one who could guide him through this, to help him manage Mom and Dad's disapproval in a way that might salvage his future. I pulled out my phone again, my thumb hovering over Robert's name. I would call him in the morning. I'd lay it all out for him, the financial consequences, the reality of his situation. I'd advise him on the smartest way to proceed. It was the right thing to do. It was what a good brother would do. Story 3. My son Leo walked out of the bathroom, looking like a different kid. His glorious gravity-defying afro, a source of both pride and endless frustration for him, was gone. In its place was a clean, sharp buzz cut that highlighted the strong line of his jaw. He was 13, caught in that awkward space between boy and man. And this haircut just shoved him 5 feet closer to the man's side. He ran a hand over his freshly shorn head, a grin spreading across his face. "What do you think? Feel the breeze?" I smiled, ruffling what little was left of his hair. "Looks good, kid. Sharp. You sure you're ready for the Halmione pinch attack?" My mother, his grandmother, showed affection with a cheek pinch that could bring a grown man to his knees. "I'm faster than her now," he declared, already moving toward the fridge. Classic Leo. Watching him, you wouldn't see me. Not at all. I'm Korean, and not just Korean, but the pale gets sunburned in the shade kind. The kind with monolids and the jet black pin-straight hair my mother still complains I don't style properly. Leo is not that. His skin is a warm, rich brown. His features are broader, softer. The hair that was now a dark fuzz on his scalp had been, until an hour ago, a magnificent crown of tight black curls. The day he was born, I remember the nurse handing him to me. I looked down at this beautiful, perfect, tiny baby with his dark skin and round eyes, and the first thought that shot through my head wasn't pride or joy. It was a cold, sharp spike of pure calculation times. This isn't my son. Asterisk. His mother, my ex-wife Sarah, was white. A freckled, red-headed Irish-American girl from Boston. We'd done the Punnett squares for fun in a college biology class. There was no combination of her genes and my genes that resulted in Leo. It just wasn't possible. Sarah was exhausted from the delivery, blissfully unaware of the silent, frantic math happening in my head. My own parents came to the hospital a few hours later. My father, a man of few words, just stared. My mother, a woman of many, many words, pulled me aside in the hallway. "Jose," she'd whispered, her eyes darting back toward the room. "He is very dark. The hospital lights are weird, Yama," I'd said, my voice flat. "And he's my son. That's all." I shut it down. I shut them down every time. At his first birthday when my aunt commented on his exotic looks. At his first day of kindergarten when my father quietly asked if I was sure. Each time my answer was a steel door slamming shut. He's my son. End of discussion. Because, by then, it was the only truth that mattered. The initial sting of betrayal from Sarah was real. It was a deep gutting wound. But it was nothing compared to the overwhelming tidal wave of love I felt for Leo. In that first year, while the certainty that he wasn't mine biologically grew from a suspicion into an undeniable fact, I was the one getting up for the 3 a.m. feedings. I was the one who could calm his crying with a specific hum. I was the one whose finger he'd wrap his entire tiny hand around, holding on like I was the only solid thing in the universe. He was mine. He became mine in every way that counted. I made a choice. I chose him. I packed the knowledge of Sarah's affair away into a small locked box in the back of my mind. I never told her I knew. What was the point? To blow up our family. To hurt the little boy who called me Appa with a gummy, toothless smile? No. He was my son, and I would be his father. Period. Sarah and I didn't last, but not because of that. We broke up for 1,000 other more boring reasons. We were young, we grew apart. She was chaos, I was stability. She wanted to chase artistic whims, I wanted to make sure Leo had a routine and got his homework done. When we divorced, it was surprisingly amicable. I didn't fight for custody. She just gave it to me. I got Leo 75% of the time. She got him every other weekend like a fun aunt who'd take him to a concert and forget to pack him a toothbrush. It worked. For Leo's sake, it worked. He was my world. He still is. So when he sent a picture of his new buzz cut to Sarah, I didn't think anything of it. I expected a reply with a bunch of heart emojis. Instead, my phone rang an hour later. It was Sarah. Her name flashed on the screen, and I felt the familiar low-grade annoyance I always did. I answered. Hey, what's up? Jose. Her voice was tight, trembling with a forced seriousness I knew all too well. It was her drama voice. We need to talk. Tonight. Can it wait? Leo and I were going to watch a movie. No. It can't wait. It's about Leo. It's important. I'm coming over. She didn't wait for a reply, just hung up. An hour later, my doorbell rang. I opened it to find Sarah standing on my porch, wringing her hands. She looked like she was about to deliver a eulogy. She swept past me into the living room where Leo was setting up the popcorn. Hey, Leo, honey, she said, her voice strained. Can you give your dad and me a minute to talk in private? Leo looked from her tense face to my confused one. Sure, Mom. He grabbed his headphones and retreated to his room, shooting me a look that clearly said times good luck with that. Asterisk. Sarah waited until his door clicked shut. She sank onto the couch. Her hands clasped in her lap like she was in a police interrogation. She took a deep, shuddering breath. Jose, she began, her eyes glistening with unshed tears. I have to tell you something. I should have told you 13 years ago, the day Leo was born. She looked at me, her face a mask of counterfeit anguish, preparing to drop a bomb she had no idea was a dud. It's about Leo's father. She looked up at me, waiting for the explosion, the accusations, the tears. She was practically vibrating with the importance of her own confession. I let the silence hang for a moment, just to watch the performance. Then I leaned back on the couch, crossed my arms, and gave her a small, tired smile. I know. Her face went blank. The practiced anguish dissolved into pure slack-jawed confusion. What? What do you mean you know? I mean, I know Sarah. I've known since the day he was born. I watched the gears turn in her head, disbelief, then denial, then a slow rising tide of anger. You knew. You've known this whole time. Her voice rose, cracking with indignation. You knew, and you never said anything to me. What was there to say? I asked, keeping my voice level. You cheated. You lied. The evidence was literally lying in a bassinet in the hospital room. I looked at him. I looked at you. I looked at me. The math wasn't hard. But I also held him. I fed him. I loved him. I made a choice. My choice was him. You liar, she spat, pointing a trembling finger at me. You let me believe for 13 years that I had this giant secret. You watched me carry this guilt. I almost laughed. Oh, the guilt was just crushing you, wasn't it? Especially on those weekends you'd cancel because a music festival popped up. The shot landed. She flinched. This isn't about your guilt, Sarah. This is about Leo's haircut. He buzzed off his afro, and suddenly you realized he looked even less like me. And you panicked that someone else might finally do the math. That's not it, she insisted, her face turning red. This is about his heritage. He deserves to know who he is. To connect with his other culture. You deprived him of that by hiding this. I deprived him. I stood up, then the calm finally starting to crack. You're the one who lied to a man and let him raise another man's child. You're the one who never said a word. Why didn't you, Sarah? Why did you let me do it? She looked away, her righteous anger deflating into a pathetic whimper. I didn't want to hurt you. The excuse was so weak. So transparently self-serving, it felt like a physical blow. She didn't want to lose the stability, the built-in father, the easy way out. She didn't want to face the consequences. Get out, I said, my voice low and cold. Get out of my house? She stormed out, of course. And true to form, she didn't just leave. She took a grenade and rolled it into my son's bedroom on her way out. An hour later, Leo's door opened. His face was blotchy, his eyes red. He stood in the hallway looking at me like I was a stranger. Mom told me, he said, his voice thick. I figured, I said softly, staying on the couch, giving him space. Come here. Or don't. Whatever you need. He hesitated, then slowly walked over and sat on the far end of the sofa, his body angled away from me. She said, you've known my whole life. Is that true? Yes. There was no point in anything but the truth now. Why didn't you tell me? He asked, the hurt in his voice a knife in my gut. You lied to me too. I did, I admitted. And I'm sorry for that. I was wrong to not prepare you for her eventually telling you. But Leo, look at me. He wouldn't. He just stared at the floor. When you were born, I said, my voice getting tight, I had a choice to make. I could be the guy who got cheated on, or I could be your dad. And it was the easiest choice I've ever made. Being your dad is the best part of my entire life. It didn't matter to me where your DNA came from. It doesn't matter now. You are my son. My son. Nothing changes that. Not her, not some other guy, nothing. He was quiet for a long time, just breathing. I could see his shoulders shaking. Finally, he wiped his eyes with the back of his hand and looked at me. So when Hermione pinches my cheeks, he said, a watery, broken smile on his face, she's pinching the cheeks of her real grandson. I felt the tension in my chest break. 100%. She tries to pinch mine, and I tell her to save it for the one she actually likes. He laughed a real laugh this time, and moved across the couch to lean his head against my shoulder. I put my arm around him and held him tight. We were okay. We'd be okay. A week later, he came to me while I was cooking dinner. I want to meet him, he said quietly. I didn't have to ask who. I just nodded, turning off the stove. Okay. If that's what you want, I'll support you. We'll figure it out. Mom already has his number, he said. She's known how to reach him this whole time. Of course she had. Sarah was thrilled. This was her chance to be the hero, to right the great wrong I had supposedly committed by loving my son. She framed it as a beautiful reunion. She called the guy a former coworker of hers named Marcus and set it up. She was going to take Leo to a cafe to meet him. She called me 2 days later, hysterical. He won't do it, she wailed into the phone. Marcus. He said no. What do you mean no? He said he has a family, a wife, and 2 daughters who don't know anything about this. He told me he made his choice 13 years ago when he told me to handle it. He said he paid for the hospital bills, which he didn't, and that was the end of it. He told me to never contact him again. My blood ran cold. Where's Leo? He's in his room. He heard the whole call, Jose. He was on the extension. He's not coming out. Her voice was a symphony of manufactured panic and self-pity. I hung up, told Leo I was on my way, and broke every speed limit getting to Sarah's apartment. I found him exactly where she said, balled up on his bed facing the wall. I sat on the edge of the mattress for a long time before he finally turned over. His face was a wreck, utterly destroyed. He doesn't want me, he whispered. That's his loss, Leo, I said, my heart shattering for him. It has nothing to do with you and everything to do with him being a coward. A real man doesn't do that. I got him home. It took hours. When we walked in the door, Sarah was there sitting on my couch, like she owned the place. Her eyes were red, but they weren't sad. They were furious. She stood up as we walked in. This is your fault, she said, her voice shaking with rage. I stopped, shielding Leo behind me. Excuse me? All of this pain. If you had just said something 13 years ago, this would all be different. I could have made Marcus be a part of his life from the beginning. We could have worked something out. But you had to be the silent martyr. And now look, you let him get his hopes up after all this time, only to have them destroyed. You did this to him. I stared at her, at the sheer monumental selfishness of her words. The audacity to stand in my house, in front of our broken-hearted son, and blame me for the consequences of her own lies. All the years of biting my tongue, of swallowing the betrayal for Leo's sake, it all just evaporated. I took a step forward, my voice dangerously quiet. You think my silence was the problem, Sarah? Yes, she shrieked. Your silence hurt everyone. My silence, I said the words like chips of ice, is the only thing that gave you a son. Because if I had said something 13 years ago, I wouldn't have stayed. I wouldn't have raised him. And you? You would have been a single mom with a baby whose father wanted nothing to do with him. My silence gave Leo a father. My silence gave him a family. My silence gave you the freedom to be a part-time parent while I did all the work. So don't you dare stand there and tell me my silence was the problem. I let the words hang in the air cold and heavy. Your lies were the problem. They've always been the problem. Now get out of our house. For good. Story 4. My grandmother is a viper in a cardigan. For my entire life, she's used words like weapons honing in on the softest parts of people and striking without hesitation. She saves the worst of her venom for me. My brother Mark died in a car accident when he was 19. At his funeral, while I was sobbing so hard I couldn't breathe, she cornered me by the casket. She patted my hand, a fake pitying look on her face, and whispered, "It's a shame God took the good one." I was 15. I couldn't even process the cruelty. I just stood there paralyzed. Years later, my husband and I lost our first child, a daughter we named Lily, who was stillborn. It was the single most devastating event of my life. A week after we buried her, my grandmother called. There was no sympathy, just a cold analytical question. "Well, are you going to try again, or are you just broken?" That was it. That was the moment the switch flipped. The part of me that had always made excuses for her, she's from a different generation, she doesn't know what she's saying, it just died. I hung up the phone and made a decision. I was done. I went full no contact. Not the dramatic announcement-making kind. The quiet, ice-cold kind. At the next family Christmas, I walked past her like she was a piece of furniture. I didn't say hello. I didn't make eye contact. When she tried to speak to me, I turned to my mother and asked her to pass the potatoes. The silence at that end of the table was so thick you could have carved it. She didn't like being ignored. A queen needs her court, and one of her subjects refusing to bow was an act of treason. First, she sent in the flying monkeys, my cousins Jessica and David. They were her golden grandchildren, the ones who could do no wrong. They caught me at my nephew's birthday party. Janice Jessica started all fake concern. "Grandma is really hurting. You're breaking her heart." "Is she?" I said, not looking up from wrapping a gift. David jumped in, more aggressive. "You're being selfish. She's an old woman. You need to get over whatever little grudge you're holding on to and show some respect." I finally looked at him. Respect is earned, David. And she spent 30 years burning that bridge. I'm just refusing to let her rebuild it on my property. I handed the gift to my sister-in-law and walked away. When the guilt trips failed, my grandmother escalated. My phone rang late one night. It was my aunt, my grandmother's staunchest defender, sobbing hysterically. "It's Grandma," she wailed. She collapsed. "We're at the hospital. She's asking for you, Janice. The doctors don't know if she's going to make it." The old me would have dropped everything, overcome with guilt, and raced to the hospital. The new me was suspicious. "Which hospital?" I asked, my voice flat. She told me. "Okay," I said. "I'm calling the nurse's station on her floor to get an update directly. I'll call you back." The line went dead quiet. Then a sputtering. Why would you do that?" "Just get down here." "Because I don't believe you," I said, and hung up. I called the hospital. They had no patient by her name. Not in the year, not admitted, nowhere. I called my mom. Aunt Carol just called me sobbing. Said Grandma collapsed and is at Memorial. My mom sighed. "I'm looking at her right now, Janice. She's on her couch watching her game shows. Carol is in the kitchen with her, they're making tea. The sheer calculated manipulation of it all sent a shock of cold fury through me. They faked a medical emergency. They used the idea of her death as a weapon to try and drag me back into line. The family split wide open after that. Half of them, led by my aunt and my golden cousins, called me a cold-hearted bitch. The other half, led by my parents, were disgusted with my grandmother's tactics. Family gatherings became a minefield of hostile glares and whispered insults. I didn't care. The peace of not having her poison in my life was worth every bit of it. 2 years passed like this. 2 years of blessed silence. I finished my degree, pouring all that anger and frustration into my studies. I was graduating magna cum laude, and my parents decided to throw me a big BBQ to celebrate. A real party. The whole extended family was invited. I knew she'd be there, but I wasn't going to let her existence ruin my day. This was my accomplishment. The party was great. The sun was out, my friends were there. And for the first time in a long time, the family drama felt distant. My mom and dad were beaming. They brought out a cake that said "Congratulations, Janice," in bright blue icing. My favorite aunt, my dad's sister, clinked her fork against a bottle to get everyone's attention. She raised her beer. "I just want to make a toast," she said, her voice full of genuine pride. "To my niece, Janice. We all know how incredibly hard you've worked for this. To graduate with magna cum laude honors is just amazing, and we are all so proud of you." A chorus of hear and applause rippled through the backyard. I felt a rare, uncomplicated wave of happiness wash over me. I smiled, feeling the warmth of the sun and the love from the people who mattered. Then from the corner of the patio where my grandmother sat stewing in a lawn chair, a voice cut through the air like a shriek of shattering glass. Well, maybe she screamed, her voice trembling with rage, causing everyone to freeze and turn toward her. Maybe we should all show a little more respect for the ones that didn't graduate. She was staring right at me, her face a twisted mask of pure, undiluted hatred. Or for the ones who didn't waste their time and their parents' money on a useless piece of paper. The backyard went dead silent. You could have heard a pin drop on the grass. Every eye swiveled from her, a trembling, venomous old woman, to me. This was it. The moment she'd engineered. All the attention, all the drama pointed at her, with me as the villain of her story. The old Janice would have shrunk, cried, apologized for being happy. The new Janice just set her beer down on the picnic table. I didn't raise my voice. I didn't need to. The quiet carried further than her screaming ever could. "Are you finished?" I asked. Her mouth opened and closed like a fish. The shock of me not immediately dissolving into tears threw her off script. I said, I repeated, my voice calm. "And cold, are you finished? Or do you have more to say about how my success is an inconvenience to you?" "This isn't about you," she spat, recovering. "This is about respect." I laughed. A short, sharp, ugly sound. Respect? You wouldn't know respect if it bit you. You want to talk about the people who didn't graduate? Let's talk about them. Let's talk about my grandfather, your husband, the alcoholic who couldn't hold a job. The one you defended every time he hit you, every time he hit his kids. He didn't graduate. Does he get your respect? A collective gasp went through the family. No one ever spoke about my grandfather. "You are a jealous, bitter woman." I continued walking slowly toward her. Her flying monkeys, Jessica and David, started to move toward her like a Secret Service detail for a tyrant. "You can't stand to see anyone happy, especially me. My joy is like poison in your veins. You tried to ruin my brother's funeral. You tried to ruin the memory of my daughter. and now you're trying to ruin this. But you're failing. Do you see? You have no more power here. I stopped a few feet from her chair. I looked at her, truly looked at her, and for the first time, I didn't see a monster. I just saw a pathetic, empty old woman. Enjoy your cake, I said, then turned my back on her and walked away. The party died a quick, awkward death after that. My parents and my husband circled the wagons around me. But the damage was done. The air was too thick with toxicity to breathe. I thought that was the end of it. I was wrong. It was only the opening skirmish. 3 days later, I was at my parents' house helping my mom sort through some old photos for a scrapbook. There was a knock on the door. Mom went to answer it and I heard her voice drop. "What are you all doing here?" I walked into the living room and froze. There they were. The unholy trinity. My grandmother flanked by Jessica and David, with my Aunt Carol bringing up the rear. They looked like they were there to perform an exorcism. "We're here for an intervention," my grandmother announced, sweeping past my mother into the house as if she owned it. "You need to leave," I said, my voice dangerously low. "Not until you listen," David said, holding up a folded piece of paper. "We've all written letters." It was so absurd I almost laughed. They ambushed me in my parents' home to read me letters about my own bad behavior. "We miss the old Janice," Jessica said, her voice dripping with fake sympathy. "The sweet girl you used to be." "The doormat, you mean," I corrected her. "The girl who took the abuse and never talked back." "Fine. You want an intervention? Let's have one. Who's first?" David, ever the brave one, stepped forward. He unfolded his letter. "Janice," he began reading in a self-important drone. "We are worried about the anger you're holding on to. It's not healthy. You need to let go and learn to forgive. Family is the most important thing." I let him get about halfway through before I cut him off. "David," I said, "are you still 2 months behind on your child support payments to Sarah? Or is it 3 now?" He stopped, his face turning beet red. "That has nothing to do with this." "It has everything to do with this," I snapped. "You're standing here reading a letter about family when you barely see your own kids. And anger. You want to talk about anger? Should I call Sarah and ask her about the hole you punched in her wall? The one that finally made her leave you? Don't you dare lecture me on forgiveness." He crumpled the letter in his fist, speechless. I turned to Jessica. "Your turn." Jessica, looking shaken, held up her own letter. I just think you're not seeing how much you've hurt Grandma. You should be grateful. She lets you live your life." "Grateful?" I laughed again, that same ugly sound. "Jessica, you're 34 years old and your husband still gives you an allowance. Because you can't be trusted with a credit card. You haven't paid a bill on your own in your entire life. You and David live off of her money, so of course you defend her. You're not her grandchildren. You're her employees. Your job is to enable her cruelty, and you're both very good at it." Jessica burst into tears. Aunt Carol rushed to her side, glaring at me. "How could you be so cruel?" "Now times is funny coming from you," I said, turning my full attention to her. "The woman who called me sobbing, pretending my grandmother was dying in a hospital. You used the idea of her death to manipulate me. You are the most two-faced, spineless person I have ever met. You've spent your entire life cleaning up her messes and making excuses for her and for what a little bit of her approval that she'll never give you. You're pathetic. Then I turned to the viper in the cardigan. She stood there silent, her face a mask of stone-cold fury. All her soldiers were wounded, their little paper swords lying useless on the floor. And you, I said, my voice dropping to a whisper. You talk about the ones we've lost. You used Mark against me. You used my daughter against me. You are a cancer. You are a black hole of misery that tries to suck everyone into it. You talk about missing the old me. Well, I'm glad she's gone. She died so I could live. I took a step closer. When Lily died, a part of me died with her. But the part that loved you, the part that made excuses for you, the part that saw you as my grandmother, it died too. As far as I'm concerned, I buried you both on the same day. You are dead to me. Just then the front door opened again. My dad walked in holding a bag of groceries. He stopped dead, taking in the scene, me standing like a general over a battlefield, my cousins in tears, my aunt sputtering, and my grandmother looking like she was about to have a genuine medical emergency this time. My mom just looked at him and said, "They came for an intervention." My dad's face hardened. He dropped the grocery bag on the floor. "Get out," he said, his voice a low growl. I'd only heard a handful of times in my life. "We were just trying to help Janice," Aunt Carol wailed. "Out," he roared, pointing to the door. "All of you, get out of my house. Now." They scrambled. They practically fell over each other, trying to get out the door, a pathetic sniveling retreat. My dad slammed the door behind them so hard the pictures on the wall rattled. He turned to me, his eyes searching mine. "Are you okay?" I nodded, a slow, deep breath leaving my body. "Yeah, Dad. I am." And for the first time, it was the absolute truth. My mom wrapped me in a hug. "I am so proud of you," she whispered. That night, I blocked their numbers. All of them. I blocked them on social media. I systematically erased every digital path they had to me. The next day, I called my dad's sister, the aunt who had toasted me at the party. I told her everything. Every last ugly detail of the ambush. The news spread through the family like wildfire. The story of the faked hospital visit, which had been a rumor, was now a confirmed fact. The story of the intervention painted them not as concerned relatives, but as a gang of bullies. The tide turned. People who had been neutral were now firmly on our side. My grandmother, for the first time in her life, found herself isolated. Her phone calls went unanswered. Her power, built on a lifetime of fear and manipulation, crumbled to dust because I had simply refused to play her game anymore. I felt nothing. No guilt. No remorse. No sadness. Just a quiet, clean, and beautiful emptiness where all that toxicity used to be. The war was over. I had won. Story 5. I can still smell the cardboard and stale air of the U-Haul. For 2,000 miles, that was our world. Me, Clara, in a truck full of everything we owned, barreling toward the Pacific Northwest for her. Her dream job. The one she talked about since we met 6 years ago. "It's a foot in the door, Louie," she'd said, her eyes shining. "The company is perfect. The city is perfect. So I made it happen. I pitched my boss on a fully remote transition, took a small pay cut for the privilege, and packed up our life. I didn't have a single friend waiting for me in Oregon, but her smile was supposed to be enough. For the first month it was. We'd unpack boxes by day and explore our new city by night feeling like pioneers. I was paying all the bills. Her job was a glorified internship with intern pay, but it felt like an investment in us. Then the chill set in. It wasn't the Oregon rain. It was her. It started with small things. She'd come home from work, drop her keys in the bowl with a clatter and sigh. A deep, world-weary sigh that sucked all the oxygen out of the room. "Tough day," I'd ask. "Just tired," she'd mumble, heading for the shower. The long, hot showers got longer. Our conversations got shorter. She started talking about the move like it was a mistake. "I don't know, Louis. It's just harder than I thought," she said one night, pushing pasta around her plate. "I miss my friends. This job is so much pressure." I tried to be supportive. "It's a huge change, Clara. It'll take time to adjust. We'll make new friends." She just nodded, her eyes fixed on something over my shoulder. A month later, the text started. "Gonna be late tonight. Project deadline is killing us." I'd make dinner, eat alone, and she'd stumble in around 11 p.m. smelling faintly of stale beer, not office coffee. When I'd ask how the project went, she'd give vague answers. "It was fine. Ben helped me finish up." Ben. The coworker. The name started popping up more and more. Ben was so funny. Ben had the best taste in music. Ben was also going through a tough time with his girlfriend. One Thursday, she sent the usual text. "Working late. Don't wait up." Around 9 p.m., a weird feeling gnawed at me. I hadn't heard from her in hours. On a whim, I opened the Find My Phone app. Her icon wasn't at her downtown office building. It was pulsing over a dot labeled the Crow's Nest Pub 3 miles away. My blood ran cold. I didn't drive there. I didn't call her out. I just sat on the couch in the dark, watching her little icon until it finally started moving toward home just after midnight. When she walked in, I was still sitting there. "Hey," she said, fumbling with her keys. "God, what a night. How was the project?" I asked, my voice flat. She froze. "It was fine. We got it done." "Good. How was the Crow's Nest?" The color drained from her face. She looked like I'd slapped her. For a full 10 seconds, she just stared, mouth slightly open, gears grinding in her head for a plausible lie. She came up with nothing. "Louis, you lied to me, Clara." Tears welled instantly. "It was a spectacular performance. I'm so sorry." Ben and a few others just wanted to grab a drink to decompress. "It was nothing. I should have told you." "You should have answered my texts," I said, holding up my phone. "I was worried." "I know. My phone was in my purse." "I'm so sorry," she sobbed, collapsing into me. "He's just a friend. I promise. It won't happen again. I'll set boundaries." Like a fool, I held her. Like a fool, I believed her. Because the alternative was thinking this entire 200,000-mile move was a catastrophic mistake. For a few months, things seemed better. She was more present. She suggested date nights. She complained about Ben being a little needy. It felt like a course correction. I started to relax. I even bought a PlayStation, something I'd put off for years, figuring I finally had some time to unwind. I got into a new RPG, a massive open-world game I could get lost in for an hour or two after work. That was my next crime. She picked the fight on a Tuesday night. I had just finished a boss battle. I took my headset off, energized. Man, that was intense, I said, turning to her on the couch. She was glaring at me, arms crossed. Must be nice. What's that supposed to mean? To just check out like that, she snapped. I'm sitting right here, Louie. I've been sitting here all night and you haven't said a word to me. You're in another world. I feel completely alone. I was floored. We just watched a movie for 2 hours. I played for maybe 90 minutes after. It's not about the time, it's about your energy. Her voice was rising. You're not here with me. You're emotionally disconnected. Is this what our life is now, me watching you play video games? Because I didn't move across the country for this. She stormed off to the bedroom and slammed the door. I sat there, stunned, controller limp in my hands. It felt insane. It was a fight she had manufactured out of thin air. The next day, she was cold and distant. I tried to apologize just to keep the peace, but she waved it away. I just need space. That afternoon, a notification popped up on my laptop. Your phone bill is ready. I clicked the link, logged into our shared account, and went to pay the bill. We had a family plan, both our numbers on the same statement. I never looked at the details. Why would I? But as my mouse hovered over the pay now button, my eyes drifted down to the usage breakdown. My line had a few hundred minutes of calls. Normal. Claudia's line had over 5000. I scrolled down to the detailed log, my heart starting to pound a low, heavy rhythm against my ribs, and there it was. A number called over and over again. Not mine. Not her mother's. I already knew whose it was. Call after call, all placed after 11 p.m. Some after midnight. The durations were staggering. 78 minutes. 124 minutes. 96 minutes. Last night, after she'd slammed the bedroom door in my face, there was a call that started at 1:14, 7 p.m. and ended at 2:19 a.m. To Ben. The screen blurred. Every lie, every excuse about being tired, every accusation she'd thrown at me, it all snapped into a sickening sharp focus. She hadn't just broken her promise. She had built an entire secret life in the wreckage of ours right under my nose. And I had paid for every single minute of it. I didn't move from the chair. I just sat there, the laptop open on the coffee table, its cold blue light painting the dark living room. The detailed phone log was a monument to my own stupidity. I printed it. All 6 pages. The front door clicked open just after 7. Clara walked in, dropping her tote bag with the usual weary thud. Hey, she said, her voice still carrying the chill from yesterday. Long day. Sit down, I said. It wasn't a request. Her eyes narrowed. She saw the papers fanned out on the table. What's that? The phone bill. She walked closer, peering down. I watched her face as she processed the columns of dates, times, and durations next to a single recurring number. There was no flash of panic. No shock. Just a slow, hardening resolve. Her mask didn't just crack. It fell off completely. So she said, her voice flat. The simple, defiant word hit me harder than a scream. So, Clara, there are over 60 hours of calls to this guy. In the last month. Almost 3 hours the night you screamed at me for playing a video game. I needed someone to talk to. She stated as if explaining the weather. You have me. Or you did. I'm your partner. I moved my entire goddamn life here for you. She finally looked at me, and her eyes were cold, dead things. And what a prize you've been. You sit there in your headset living in some fantasy world while I'm drowning out here. I'm lonely, Lewis. You're lonely. So you call him, the guy you swore you'd set boundaries with after you lied about being at the pub with him. I reached out because I was hurting. She shot back, her voice finally rising. Because you're not present. You're not here. He listens to me. He actually asks about my day and cares about the answer. The audacity was breathtaking. She had manufactured my crime to justify her own. The video game wasn't the problem, it was the excuse. This is insane. I whispered, shaking my head. You're blaming me for this. For your affair. It's not an affair, she yelled. We haven't slept together. Oh, well, thank God for that one remaining technicality. I said, my voice dripping with a sarcasm I didn't know I possessed. You just built an entire, intimate relationship behind my back and lied about it every single day. My mistake. We stared at each other across the room, the gap between us no longer just a few feet of carpet but a canyon. I saw then that there was nothing left to save. There was no remorse in her eyes. Only justification. She broke the silence. I can't do this anymore. Do what? Get caught. Be with you, she said, her words clipped and final. We're done, Lewis. This isn't working. Just like that. 6 years across country move, a shared life ended in a sentence. Before I could even respond, she pulled out her phone, her thumb already flying across the screen. I saw the website she was on. Apartments.com. What are you doing? I asked, my voice hollow. I'm looking for a place, she said, not even looking up. Ben and I are getting one together. The air left my lungs. The casual cruelty of it was a physical blow. She wasn't just leaving me. She was replacing me. Instantly. Seamlessly. As if I were a burnt-out light bulb. I started laughing. A raw, ragged sound that scared even me. Of course you are. Of course. I didn't sleep that night. Or the next. She packed her things in a furious, silent burst, stuffing clothes and books into the same cardboard boxes we'd so hopefully unpacked together months earlier. 2 days later, Ben pulled up in a rusted pickup truck. I watched from the window as they loaded her life out of mine. She never looked back. The silence in the apartment was deafening. Every room held a ghost. I was in a new city where the only person I knew had just ripped my heart out. The isolation was a physical weight pressing down on me. After a week of staring at the walls, I did the only thing I could think of. I found a therapist. Her name was Dr. Anya Sharma. And in our first session, I just laid it all out. The move, the lies, the phone bill, the video game. When I finished, she looked at me with kind, intelligent eyes. Louis, she said gently. She didn't leave you because you played a video game. She used the video game as a lever to pry you away so she wouldn't have to feel guilty about already being gone. That single sentence reframed everything. A month later, my phone buzzed with a call from Megan, a mutual friend from back home. Louise, hey. I heard what happened, she stammered. Clara called me. Said you guys just grew apart. I let out a short, harsh laugh. Grew apart. Yeah, I guess you could call it that. She grew a whole new relationship with a coworker, and I found out on the phone bill. There was a stunned silence on the other end. "Oh my God. Are you serious? She said you were emotionally checked out." "And I bought a PlayStation I finished for her." "Yeah, I know the story she's spinning. I told Megan everything. The real version." "Wow," she breathed. "That's monstrous. I'm so sorry, Louis." Then she paused. "Well, maybe this will make you feel a tiny bit better. Her plan isn't exactly going smoothly." "What do you mean?" "Ben's girlfriend found out everything and kicked him to the curb. Apparently she owned their condo and made all the money. He got his clothes, and that's it. Clara told me they couldn't get approved for any of the apartments they wanted because his credit is shot, and she makes nothing." A slow, dark warmth spread through my chest. "So where are they?" Megan's voice lowered like she was sharing a delicious secret. "You're not gonna believe this. They had to buy some clapped-out 20-year-old RV. They're living in it. At a campground by the interstate." I had to put the phone on my lap because my hand was shaking from trying to suppress my laughter. I pictured it. Clara, who loved boutique hotels and curated Instagram aesthetics, living in a tin can. Ben, the charming office poet, emptying a chemical toilet. The image was so pathetic, so perfectly poetically just that it was almost beautiful. That night, for the first time in months, I slept soundly. The next morning, I woke up with a clarity I hadn't felt in years. I opened my laptop and pulled up my work portal, my social media, my contacts. I blocked Clara's number. I blocked her on Facebook, on Instagram, on LinkedIn. I erased every digital trace of her. It was a digital amputation, and it felt incredible. Then I opened a map of the United States. My job was fully remote. I had supported us in this expensive city on my salary alone. I could live anywhere. Denver, Austin. Back east, closer to my family. The possibilities unfurled before me, a future she had no part in. She wasn't a loss. She was an anchor I had just cut loose. Let her have her life in a trailer park with the man she'd chosen. I was free. And I was just getting started. Story 6. My parents adored Nova. I mean, they loved her more than they loved me. And I'm not even sure I'm joking. At family dinners, my mom would hang on her every word while my dad laughed at jokes that weren't even funny. She was charming, beautiful, and she had this way of making everyone feel like they were the center of the universe. When I married her, it felt like I hadn't just won the lottery. I'd fixed the damn system in my favor. The first year was perfect. The kind of year you see in movies and roll your eyes at. Then she quit her job. "I want to focus on us, on building a home," she set her hand on my chest. I was making enough to support us both, so I just nodded. What was I supposed to say? That's when my brother Jack started coming around more. Jack. The black sheep, the perpetual screw-up, the one my parents were always worried sick about. He'd flunked out of college, bounced between dead-end jobs, and had a knack for finding the wrong kind of friends. Suddenly, he was at our house constantly. At first it was just for dinner. Then it was afternoons. Then it was entire days while I was at work. He's just really going through it, Nova would tell me. He opens up to me. I'd come home from a 10-hour day to find them on the couch, deep in conversation, a half-empty bottle of wine between them. The conversation would die the second I walked in. "Hey man," Jack would say, getting up. "Just checking in." "It's 8 o'clock at night, Jack," I said one evening. my patience wearing thin. Nova shot me a look. He needed to talk Christian. I'm helping him. The help started looking a lot like a full-time job she wasn't getting paid for. Her phone was always buzzing with texts from him. They had inside jokes I wasn't privy to. My mom even commented on it once. It's so sweet how Nova's taken Jack under her wing, she'd said. Maybe she's the one who can finally straighten him out. It didn't feel sweet. It felt off. You're with him all day, I finally said to her one night in bed. I come home and you two are whispering on the couch like I'm interrupting something. Don't be ridiculous, she snapped, turning her back to me. He's your brother. He's depressed. I'm providing mental support. Is that a crime? Her excuses got thinner. A trip to the mall with Jack to get him some new clothes. A long lunch because he needed to vent about Dad. A drive to the beach because he needed to clear his head. Unease curdled into suspicion. I started to feel like a visitor in my own home, a third wheel in my own marriage. The breaking point wasn't some dramatic, caught-in-the-act scene. It was quiet, digital, and utterly sordid. I was on the family Amazon account looking for a new grill cover. As I browsed, the Inspired by Your Shopping Trends section popped up. There, nestled between grill brushes and BBQ sauce, was a recommendation for a brand of lubricant I'd never heard of. And next to it, a variety of adult toys that made my stomach clench. I clicked on the order history. There it was from 3 weeks ago. A purchase for over $200 delivered to our address. Signed for by Nova. I felt the blood drain from my face. I took a screenshot and sent it to her phone with a single message times. What the hell is this asterisk? She was out supposedly helping Jack fix his resume. She came home an hour later, her face a mask of practiced innocence. What was that text about? She asked, setting her purse down. I just held up my phone, showing her the order history. Her composure cracked, just for a second. A flicker of panic in her eyes before she smoothed it over. She laughed. It was the most bizarre, jarring sound I'd ever heard. Oh my God, you found it, she said, shaking her head as if this were all a hilarious misunderstanding. I can't believe you found it. Explain it. Nova. It was for Jack's birthday. It's next month, she said, her voice giddy. A bunch of us were going to pitch in and hire him a stripper for a laugh. A gag gift. I was just buying some props for her to make it extra ridiculous. I stared at her. A stripper. For my troubled, depressed brother. It was the single dumbest lie I had ever heard. It was so outlandish, so insulting to my intelligence that I was speechless. You're lying, I said, my voice flat. Tears welled in her eyes instantly. How can you say that? How can you think I would? That I would cheat on you? The waterworks were on full blast. She cried about how I didn't trust her, how she was only trying to help my broken family, how my suspicion was the real problem. It was a masterclass in manipulation. And a part of me, the part that was desperately clinging to the woman I thought I'd married, buckled. We fought for days. It was ugly. But in the end, she wore me down. She swore on her life she would cut back on the time with Jack. She promised it would be me and her. Only us. I want to recommit, she whispered, crying in my arms. I want us to be a real family. I want to have a baby, Christian. That was the kill shot. The one thing I wanted more than anything. I folded. I chose to believe a lie because the truth was too terrifying to contemplate. 2 months later, she was pregnant. The next 4 years were a blur of fragile peace. Jack moved out of state for a job opportunity, and the distance was a balm on my frayed nerves. Nova became the perfect mother to our son Leo. And Leo, he was my whole world. He had my eyes, my goofy laugh. I fell so completely in love with that little boy that the memory of my suspicions felt like a bad dream. I was a father. We were a family. I convinced myself the cracks had been sealed. Then last week I got a call from my mom. "Guess who's coming home for a visit?" she chirped. "Jack, and he's bringing someone. Her name is Chloe, and he says it's serious. He's bringing her to dinner on Saturday to meet everyone." Isn't that wonderful? My stomach twisted into a knot. "Yeah, Mom, wonderful." When I told Nova, her reaction was strange. Not happy, not excited. Her face went blank, her jaw tight. "He's bringing a girl?" she asked, her voice clipped. "A fiancé, I think," I said, watching her. Mom's ecstatic. Nova didn't say another word. She just walked out of the room. The night of the dinner, the air in my parents' house was thick with forced cheerfulness. Jack looked good, better than I'd seen him in years. And Chloe, his fiancée, was lovely, smart, funny, and clearly smitten with him. My parents were fawning all over her. I held Leo on my lap, feeding him a piece of bread, feeling a sense of dread I couldn't shake. Across the table, Nova sat in silence, a storm brewing in her eyes. She barely touched her food, just stared at Jack and Chloe, her knuckles white around her wine glass. I saw Jack catch her eye. He gave a small, almost imperceptible shake of his head. A warning. It was a warning she had no intention of heeding. After a long, tense silence, Nova pushed her chair back slightly. She took a slow sip of wine, her gaze sweeping over all of us at the table before landing squarely on Jack's new fiancée. "Well," Nova said, her voice dangerously calm, "since we're all here sharing such happy family news, I have a little announcement of my own." My mother beamed, ready for more good news. "Oh, what is it, dear?" Nova's eyes locked on Jack. "I just think it's important for Chloe to know exactly what kind of man she's marrying. A real family man." She paused, letting the silence stretch until it was a physical weight in the room. Then she turned, her smile a sharp, broken thing, on me. "And for Christian to finally know the truth." I felt Leo shift in my lap, blissfully unaware. "Nova, what are you doing?" I asked, my voice low and tight. She ignored me. Her gaze returned to Jack, who was now ashen. "Congratulations, Jack. You're going to be a wonderful stepfather. You've had practice after all." She looked at Leo, then back at Jack. "Since you're Leo's biological father." The words didn't register at first. They were just sounds disconnected from meaning, floating in the suddenly silent room. My dad's fork clattered onto his plate. My mom made a small, strangled noise. Chloe's hand flew to her mouth, her eyes wide with horror darting between Jack and the small boy on my lap. The boy with my eyes. My laugh. I looked down at Leo. He stared back, confused by the sudden tension. I saw it then. Or I forced myself to see it. The curve of his smile wasn't mine. It was a faint, ghostly echo of Jack's. "Nova," Jack choked out, shaking his head. Don't do this." "Do what, Jack? Tell the truth." She spat, the calm facade cracking to reveal pure molten rage. "You get to move on. You get to have this perfect new life with her while I'm stuck." "I don't think so." My world wasn't just collapsing. It was being incinerated. Every memory of the last 5 years flashed before my eyes, now tainted, rotten. The pregnancy announcement. The delivery room. Leo's first steps. All of it a lie. A grand, elaborate performance. Is it true? I asked, my voice a stranger's. It didn't even tremble. It was hollowed out dead. Jack couldn't meet my eyes. He just stared at his plate. That was all the answer I needed. I stood up, lifting Leo into my arms. He wrapped his little arms around my neck, burying his face in my shoulder. Bedtime, I announced to the room of shattered people. I turned and walked out of the dining room, my back straight. Each step a monumental effort. I could feel their eyes on my back, a searing heat of pity and disgust. I put Leo in his car seat, buckled him in, and drove away without a single look back. The drive home was silent. Nova arrived 20 minutes later, dropped off by an Uber. She walked in like she was coming home from the grocery store. "We need to talk," she said. "No, we don't," I replied from the couch where I'd been staring at a blank TV screen. "Get your things. I want you out. Tonight." Her face crumpled. The tears started, the same ones that had worked 5 years ago. "Christian, please." I was angry. "I didn't mean it." "You meant every word I said," my voice like gravel. "You've been lying to me for 5 years. You let me love a child that wasn't mine. You didn't just cheat on me, Nova. You used a child to do it. You used my son. He can still be your son," she cried, reaching for me. I recoiled as if she were on fire. "Don't you dare touch me. Get your stuff and get out of my house." She packed a bag, sobbing hysterically the entire time. It had no effect on me. I was a block of ice. When she was finally standing at the door, suitcase in hand, she looked at me one last time. "I loved you," she whispered. "No, you didn't," I said, and closed the door in her face. The next morning, I called a lab. The cheek swab was a quiet, sterile violation. Leo thought it was a game. He giggled when I swabbed his cheek, then mine. The week I waited for the results was the longest of my life. I went to work. I made Leo dinner. I read him bedtime stories. I acted like a normal father while my entire identity was pending. The email arrived on a Friday afternoon. I opened the attached PDF. Asterisk, probability of paternity 0%. Asterisk. 0. I didn't rage. I didn't cry. I just sat there and let the emptiness wash over me. Then a new feeling started to burn through the void, cold, hard clarity. This wasn't the end. This was the beginning of a war. And I was going to win. My first call was to the best family law attorney in the city. I laid it all out. The affair. The public confession. Nova's unemployment. Jack's new life in another state with a fiancé who now surely wanted nothing to do with this mess. "She's financially dependent on you," my lawyer, a sharp woman named Miller, said. "The biological father has shown no interest in a paternal role. In fact, his silence since the revelation could be construed as abandonment. You are in every meaningful way this child's father. You are his primary caregiver, his source of stability. We file for sole custody." Immediately. Nova was served the next week. Her response was a flurry of desperate texts and voicemails. Pleading, apologizing, threatening. I blocked her number. Jack tried to call once. I picked up. "Christian man, I am so sorry," he started. "Are you prepared to pay child support for the next 14 years? Jack, I asked, my tone flat and businesslike. Silence. "Are you going to move back here? Are you going to quit your job and fight me for custody of your son?" More silence. Just the sound of his weak, pathetic breathing. That's what I thought I said and hung up. He never called again. The legal battle was a formality. Nova couldn't afford a decent lawyer. She showed up to the mediation looking haggard and lost. Jack signed away his paternal rights in a notarized document mailed from another state. He wanted nothing to do with the bomb Nova had detonated. In the end, she didn't even fight. The court granted me uncontested sole legal and physical custody. The judge looked at me over his glasses. "He is your son, Mr. Hayes. In every way that matters. It's been 6 months. I sold the house, the one she wanted to build a home in. Leo and I live in a new apartment downtown. I started going to therapy. I haven't had a drink since that night at my parents' house. I cut them all out. My parents who tried to mediate. Jack the ghost. And Nova the architect of it all. They don't exist anymore. My family is just me and Leo now. Sometimes he asks about his mom. I tell him she's working through some things, and that I love him more than anything in the world. He is my son. Biology be damned. I'm the one who kisses his scraped knees, who reads him stories until my voice is hoarse, who tucks him in at night. I am his father. They took everything from me, but they left me with him. And in the end, they gave me the only thing that ever truly mattered." Story 7. The last thing I did before leaving for my work trip was check the new gate lock. It was a beast, a heavy-duty deadbolt that clicked shut with the satisfying finality of a bank vault. The fence was 8 feet of solid black aluminum, perfectly code-compliant, and I thought perfectly teenager-proof. The pool shimmered a pristine turquoise jewel I'd sunk half my savings into. My own private oasis. 2 weeks in Chicago for a conference, and then I'd be back to enjoy it. I should have known it was too good to be true. The moment my car pulled into the driveway, 2 weeks later, I felt it. A knot in my stomach. The side gate, the one with the brand new lock, was slightly ajar. Not wide open, just enough to scream that something was wrong. I dropped my suitcase on the gravel and walked over. The deadbolt wasn't picked. It was destroyed. The metal around it was warped and splintered like someone had taken a crowbar to it. My backyard looked like a hurricane had hit a frat house. Red Solo cups and beer cans littered the grass, some floating like little plastic buoys in my once pristine pool. A lawn chair was overturned, one of its legs snapped clean off. Cigarette butts were ground into the new patio stones. Someone had even thrown a half-eaten hot dog into one of the skimmers. The whole place reeked of stale beer and chlorine. Rage, cold and sharp, went through me. I didn't even clean up. I walked straight inside, went to my office, and pulled up the security feed on my desktop. The system had 4 HD cameras, all motion activated. The files were all their timestamped. I clicked play on the first one from 5 nights ago. It was like watching a nature documentary, except the animals were a pack of local high schoolers. The first 2 lanky kids in hoodies spent 10 minutes prying at the gate before it finally gave way. Then the floodgates opened. Over 20 of them poured into my yard like it was a public water park. I watched for an hour, fast-forwarding through the grainy nighttime footage. I saw every face. I saw the kid who broke my lawn chair by trying to do a backflip off it. I saw the girl who laughed as she flicked her cigarette into the pool. I saw them all clear as day, their smug, entitled faces illuminated by the pool lights I'd paid a fortune to install. I saved the clips to a thumb drive. I had them. The next morning, I walked into the police station. The town is small, the kind of place where the police mostly deal with parking tickets and lost dogs. The officer at the desk, a guy named Miller with a gut that strained the buttons of his uniform, looked bored before I even opened my mouth. "Can I help you?" he sighed. "I need to file a report," I said, placing the thumb drive on the counter. "Breaking and entering, vandalism, trespassing." Miller picked up the drive and dangled it between his fingers. "Okay. What happened?" I laid it all out. The 2-week trip, the broken lock, the trashed yard, the pool. "It's all on there," I said, pointing to the drive. "HD video. You can see every one of their faces." He didn't seem impressed. He leaned back in his chair, which groaned in protest. "Look, kids do stupid things. They probably saw the new pool and got carried away. You sure you want to make a big deal out of this?" I stared at him. "A big deal? They did thousands of dollars in damage and broke into my property. Yes, I want to make a big deal out of it. That's your job." His eyes narrowed. "My job is to keep the peace. Dragging 20 kids and their families through the mud over a pool party isn't exactly keeping the peace." "Just watch the video," I said, my voice tight. "Then do your job." He sighed again, a long theatrical exhale. "Fine. Leave it here. We'll take a look when we get a chance." A week went by. Nothing. I called and was told Officer Miller was looking into it. Another week. I called again. Miller was out on patrol. I left a message. He didn't call back. The message was clear: they were going to bury this. My trashed yard was cleaned up, the pool filter was fixed, but the anger was still simmering. I was being stonewalled. In my own town. I walked back into the station 2 weeks to the day after I dropped off the evidence. Miller was at the same desk, sipping a coffee. He looked up, and the briefest flicker of annoyance crossed his face before he smoothed it over. "Austin, right? We're still investigating," he said before I could speak. "No, you're not," I said, keeping my voice level. "You haven't done a thing. You haven't called me. You haven't identified a single person from that crystal clear video I gave you. These things take time. I'm done waiting." I leaned forward, planting my hands on his desk. "Here's the deal, Officer Miller. Either you start making arrests by the end of this week, or my lawyer is going to file a lawsuit against this department for dereliction of duty. And trust me, he'll be very interested in seeing that video too." The color drained from his face. The word lawsuit hangs different in a small town. It's a threat that echoes. He held up his hands. Okay. Calm down. There's no need for that. Let me make some calls." I walked out of there, feeling a grim sense of satisfaction. It was a bluff. I didn't have a lawyer, but it had worked. And then, for another week, silence. I was about to make good on my threat, find a lawyer in the city, when my phone finally rang. It was an unknown number. "This is Officer Miller." His voice was flat, all the folksy charm gone. "Finally," I said. "So you have some names for me?" There was a long pause on the other end of the line. I could hear him breathing. "We've identified a few of them, Austin," he said, slowly, his voice dropping to a low conspiratorial tone. "But look, before we proceed, you need to understand something." "Understand what?" Another pause. The thing is, he said, his voice heavy, with warning there are some names on this list. Important names. You might want to seriously reconsider how far you want to take this. Important names. I laughed a short, sharp bark of disbelief. What the hell is that supposed to mean, Miller? Is this town so broken that some last names are get out of jail free cards? I'm just telling you how it is, he said, his voice a low rumble. These aren't just any kids. Their parents are involved in the community. You push this, it's going to get messy. For you. The threat hung in the air, thick and greasy. It wasn't about justice anymore. It was about who knew who. I don't care if the governor's son was doing cannonballs into my pool, Miller. They broke the law. File the charges. That's an order from a citizen and a taxpayer. Do your job. I hung up before he could answer. The first volley didn't come from the police. It came from my own girlfriend, Sarah. She showed up that evening with a bottle of wine and a worried look on her face. I ran into Carol Ann downtown, she said, avoiding my eyes as she uncorked the wine. Carol Ann was the town's biggest gossip. She said, you're trying to press charges against half the high school. I'm pressing charges against the 21 individuals who broke into my house and caused $5,000 in damages, I corrected. She finally looked at me, her expression pain. Austin, they're kids. They did a stupid thing. Are you really going to brand them all as criminals? Ruin their chances at college, their futures over a dumb party. They broke my gate with a crowbar. Sarah. They trashed my property. The dumb party was a crime. What am I supposed to do? Send them a thank you note? You're supposed to be the adult, she said, her voice rising. You could just talk to the parents, make them pay for the damages. Why do you have to be such a bully about it? It's just a pool. The word bully landed like a punch to the gut. A bully, I'm the victim here. Are you? She shot back. Or are you a guy with a new pool who can't stand that some kids had fun in it without your permission? I stared at her, speechless. It was like I was speaking a different language. We didn't resolve it. She left the full wine bottle on the counter and walked out. The next call was from my mother. Her voice was pure weaponized guilt. Austin, honey, I heard what's happening. Mrs. Gable from the church group called me. Her grandson was there. She's worried sick. You know these families, we have to live here. Please, for my sake, just let this go. Even my best friend Mark cornered me at our usual spot for a beer. Dude, I get it. You're pissed. But you're going up against the whole town on this. Is this the hill you really want to die on? It felt like the walls were closing in. Every conversation was the same. I wasn't the victim. I was the villain. The unreasonable asshole making a mountain out of a molehill. I felt totally, utterly alone. It was me against everyone. That night, unable to sleep, I did what any desperate person does. I went online. I found a generic legal advice forum, created a temporary account, and laid out the whole story, stripping out names and locations. The break-in, the video, the damage, the police stonewalling, the pressure from family and friends. I hit post and watched the screen, expecting to be called an asshole there too. The comments trickled in. Most were supportive. NTA. Your property, your rules. Call a lawyer and the local news. But then one comment stopped me cold. Asterisk user. Small Town Blues wrote, I guarantee the cops aren't lazy. They're scared. There's a big fish in that group of kids. Mayor's kid, police chief's nephew, something like that. They're not protecting the kids, they're protecting their own jobs. Find out who they are. That's your leverage. Asterisk. The words clicked into place with horrifying clarity. Miller's warning about important names. The coordinated town-wide pressure. It wasn't a random social phenomenon. It was a defense mechanism. The next day, I got a text from a guy I knew from high school, Kevin. He worked for a pool maintenance company, the one I'd hired to fix the filter. Asterisk, hey man, can we talk off the record? Asterisk, we met at a coffee shop in the next town over. He looked nervous, constantly glancing over his shoulder. Look, Austin, I shouldn't be doing this, he started, his voice low. But my boss showed me your security footage to identify what kind of crap was in the skimmer. I saw the kids. I leaned forward. And he took a deep breath. You know Mayor Jenkins' daughter, Ashley. She's the one who was flicking cigarettes into the pool. And the kid who did the backflip off your chair and broke it. That's Jason Thompson. Judge Thompson's kid. It's a who's who of this town's country club roster. There it was. The ugly, simple truth. I wasn't fighting a bunch of delinquent teens. I was fighting the town's power structure. Pressing charges wasn't just ruining the kids' futures. It was threatening their parents. And in a town this small, people like that don't forgive. They don't forget. They get even. My business permits, my property taxes, simple traffic stops, my life could become a bureaucratic nightmare. I'd be a permanent outsider in my own home. I went home, my anger replaced by something colder. A clear, hard sense of strategy. I couldn't win a public war, but I could still win the battle. I pulled out my phone and dialed Officer Miller. Austin. He answered, his voice wary. Have you had some time to think? I have, I said, my tone even and calm. It clearly unnerved him. I've decided to drop the request for criminal charges. I could hear the relief in his exhale. Good. That's a smart move. I'll let the families know. I'm not finished. I cut in, my voice turning to ice. I'm dropping the criminal charges on one condition. You are going to arrange a meeting with me and every single parent of every kid in that video. It will be held at my house tomorrow night at 7 p.m. Whoa, now I can't force them to. You won't have to force them, Miller. You're going to give them a choice. They can either show up at my house with a checkbook, or they can watch their little darlings on the 11 o'clock news. I sent a copy of the video to a reporter in the city this afternoon. His name is Dan Matthews. He's very interested in a story about small-town corruption and how the children of the elite are above the law. Whether he runs that story depends entirely on how my meeting goes tomorrow night. The silence on the other end of the line was absolute. I had him. I had all of them. The next evening, my driveway was filled with Mercedes, BMWs, and oversized SUVs. One by one, they filed into my living room, the mayor, the judge, the doctors, the business owners. They stood in awkward silence, refusing to look at me, their faces a mask of resentment and humiliation. I stood before them, a single sheet of paper in my hand. Good evening, I said, my voice echoing in the quiet room. There's no need for The new deadbolt. The patio chair. The full drain and cleaning of the pool. The repair of the filtration system. Miscellaneous cleanup. And a $500 inconvenience fee for my time. The total is $6,475. I placed the invoice on the coffee table. That comes out to $309 per family. I don't care how you split it up. I just want to check for the full amount on this table before you leave. Once I have it, the matter is closed. The video disappears forever. Any questions? No one spoke. The silence was thick with what they couldn't say. After a long moment, Judge Thompson stepped forward, pulled out a checkbook, and wrote. One by one, the others followed suit, a procession of simmering, impotent rage. They didn't get justice. But I did. Story 8. The smell of sawdust and stale coffee. That was my 6 a.m. Every morning, I'd unlock the side entrance to Builder's Best, flip the industrial breakers, and get the registers humming before the sun had a chance to properly wake up. It was usually just me and the quiet hum of the fluorescent lights. But not on Tuesdays. Tuesdays were Nancy's early day. Miles, did you remember to face the premium wood stain? She asked without looking up from her clipboard. Her voice had this unique talent for making a simple question sound like an accusation. Just finished, I said, rolling a pallet of concrete bags toward aisle 7. Good. Because Mr. Henderson will notice. He always notices. Nancy was the assistant manager. A title she wore like a crown of thorns. She expected everyone else to worship. She was all sharp angles and sharper words, a woman who seemed to be perpetually disappointed by the universe and everyone in it. Especially me. The bell over the main entrance chimed. We both froze. We weren't open for another hour. I glanced at Nancy, who had a pinched, annoyed look on her face, as if a customer daring to show up early was a personal insult. A man stood there silhouetted against the morning haze. He wore a plain gray hoodie, hood pulled low, and jeans. He didn't look like a contractor. He looked wrong. Sorry, we're not open yet, Nancy called out, her voice dripping with condescension. The man didn't answer. He just took a step inside, letting the door swing shut behind him with a soft Times thump asterisk. Then he pulled a gun from his waistband. It wasn't like the movies. There was no dramatic music, no slow-motion reveal. 1 second he was just a guy, the next he was a guy with a matte black pistol that seemed to suck all the air out of the room. It was ugly and real. Nobody move, he said. His voice was muffled flat. Nobody gets hurt. My blood went cold. My hands, still dusty from the concrete bags, flew up on instinct. Every muscle in my body screamed at me to do something, anything, but my brain was a flat line of pure white-hot panic. The only thought that broke through was Times, don't be a hero. Heroes die in hardware stores. Asterisk. The man's eyes, dark and empty under the hood, flicked from me to Nancy. He gestured with the gun. You. Manager. Come here. Nancy made a small, terrified squeak. It was the most human sound I'd ever heard her make. She took a hesitant step forward. He was fast. He closed the distance, grabbing her by the arm and yanking her in front of him, using her as a shield. The muzzle of the gun pressed hard against her temple. Please, Nancy whimpered, tears already welling in her eyes. Please just take whatever you want. The vault, the gunman grunted, his voice tight. Open it. Now. He started dragging her toward the back office. He looked back at me, the gun never wavering from Nancy's head. You. On your knees. Hands on your head. You even think about moving and she gets it. I dropped to the floor so fast my kneecaps screamed. The cold concrete bit into my jeans. I laced my fingers behind my head, staring at the scuff marks and dust bunnies on the floor. I could hear Nancy's ragged sobs, the scrape of her shoes, as he pulled her along the click of the office door opening. My heart hammered against my ribs like it was trying to escape. All I could do was listen. The metallic groan of the vault door. The rustle of cash bags. The gunman's low, urgent commands. It felt like an eternity. I kept my eyes screwed shut, praying. Just let him leave. Just let us live through this. The office door creaked open again. I heard their footsteps approaching. Don't call the cops for 10 minutes. The gunman's voice was right behind me now. I felt the cold dread of his presence. I see a phone in your hand. Before that, I'll come back. A final terrifying silence. Then the jingle of the front doorbell. He was gone. I stayed on the floor, every muscle locked. I counted to 60, then to 100. The only sound was Nancy's hitched, frantic breathing. Slowly shakily, I got to my feet. My legs felt like jelly. I turned to look at her. She was leaning against a shelf of paint cans, her face pale and streaked with mascara. Her body was trembling. Nancy, I said, my voice a dry rasp. Are you okay? Her head snapped up. The fear in her eyes was gone. It was replaced by something else. Something hot and venomous. Okay, she hissed, her voice a low, dangerous growl. Am I okay? She pushed herself off the shelf and strode toward me. Her fists were clenched at her sides. She put a gun to my head, she spat, jabbing a finger at her own temple. A loaded gun. Right here. And you just knelt there. On the floor. Like a dog. I was stunned. I couldn't form a sentence. He had a gun, Nancy. What was I supposed to do? Do something. She shrieked, her voice echoing through the cavernous store. You're the man. You were supposed to protect me. You were supposed to fight him. You just let him take me. Her words hit me like physical blows. My mind was still reeling from the robbery, from the very real possibility of dying on a Tuesday morning, and now this. It was surreal. Fight him. He would have shot us. He would have shot times, you asterisk. Maybe, but at least you would have tried. Her face was inches from mine, now contorted with a rage that was far more terrifying than the gunman's dead-eyed calm. You just knelt there and let it happen. You didn't do a single thing to help me. You are a weak, pathetic excuse for a man. I just stared at her, my mouth hanging open. The adrenaline from the robbery was curdling and my stomach turning into a sick, confused dread. This wasn't shock. This was something else. This was personal. This was hatred. I can't believe I was almost killed standing next to a coward like you, she whispered, her voice dripping with contempt. She took a step back, a strange, triumphant glint in her tear-filled eyes. In the distance I heard it. A faint rising siren. Someone must have seen him leave and called the police. Nancy's expression shifted in a split second. The venomous rage vanished, replaced by the mask of a trembling, traumatized victim. Her lower lip began to quiver. A fresh wave of tears streamed down her cheeks. She looked at me, and for just a moment before she turned toward the sound of the approaching sirens, her eyes narrowed. It wasn't a look of shared trauma. It was a look of pure, calculated ice. My phone buzzed on the coffee table, a jarring sound in the dead quiet of my apartment. I'd been staring at the wall for 3 hours, replaying the feel of cold concrete on my knees, the sight of the gun against Nancy's head, the sound of her voice sharp as broken glass calling me a coward. The caller ID read Mr. Henderson. I ignored it. I couldn't talk about it again. Not now. It buzzed again immediately. A text followed. * Miles, pick up. It's important. It's about the robbery. *. With a sigh that felt like it came from my bones, I answered. Hello. Miles? It's Frank Henderson. Are you someplace you can talk? His voice was tight strain. Not the usual calm, folksy tone of a man who'd spent 40 years selling lumber. I'm at home. I'm fine, I lied. Good. Listen. The police just left. They reviewed the security footage, not the inside cameras. The robber smashed those. The ones in the parking lot. I waited. I could hear him take a deep breath on the other end. Miles. Nancy knew him. The words didn't compute. Knew him? What do you mean? Like from the neighborhood? No, Henderson said, his voice dropping. The footage from 5:45 a.m., 15 minutes before he came in. It shows Nancy getting out of her car. He was waiting for her. The gunman. My stomach clenched. Waiting for her. To attack her. No, son. They talked. They stood there talking for a full minute right by her trunk. He wasn't wearing a hood. They looked calm. He gestured toward the store. She nodded. Then he put his hand on her arm. A cold dread, heavier and more suffocating than the fear I'd felt on the floor of the store, began to creep up my spine. At the end, Henderson continued, his voice cracking with disbelief. Right before he pulled up his hood and she walked toward the entrance. He leaned in and kissed her. The phone felt slick in my hand. Kissed her. Like he was her boyfriend. Because he is. His name is Kevin, and he's her new boyfriend. The police just picked them both up. She planned the whole damn thing, Miles. I collapsed back onto the couch, the air knocked out of me. It was like the world had tilted sideways. Every piece of the morning clicked into place, with a series of sickening times thuds. Her terror. Her tears. All of it a performance. And the rage. Her furious, venomous attack on me. It wasn't shock. It wasn't trauma. It was part of the script. You're the man. You were supposed to protect me. The words echoed in my head. But now they had a different, more sinister meaning. She wasn't angry that I hadn't saved her. She was angry that I hadn't played my part. The part of the hero who gets hurt. The gunman dragging her to the vault, using her as a shield. It wasn't to control her. It was to separate us. To give him and his girlfriend a private moment. To clean out the safe. The sick realization washed over me. She didn't just want a story to deflect suspicion. She wanted a times better times story. A more convincing one. A headline. * Brave manager survives terrifying hostage ordeal. Coworker fails to intervene. * Or maybe something even better. * Heroic employee wounded trying to save manager from armed robber. * A little blood would have really sold it, wouldn't it? My blood. Would she have cared if he'd shot me? in the leg, in the chest. A dead hero is even more tragic, more believable. Her grief would have been Oscar-worthy. I felt a sudden violent urge to be sick. I stumbled to the bathroom and dry heaved over the toilet, my body trembling with a fresh wave of adrenaline. This wasn't just a robbery. It was a setup. I was a prop in her twisted little play, and my only value was in how I could make her look better. She hadn't been scared times for times me. She had been angry times at times me for not bleeding on cue. The betrayal was so profound, so absolute, it felt like a physical weight pressing down on my chest, making it impossible to breathe. That look in her eye, right before the sirens came. That flash of pure calculated ice. It wasn't triumph. It was disappointment. Disappointment that the show hadn't been more dramatic. An hour later, my phone rang again. Henderson. Miles, he said, his voice softer now. The police confirmed it all. Full confession from the boyfriend. Nancy's not talking, but it doesn't matter. They've got her dead to rights. Conspiracy, armed robbery. She's going away for a long time. Good, I said. The word was hollow. There was no relief in it. No sense of victory. Listen to me, he said firmly. I want you to take some time. As much as you need. Full pay. The company has a counseling service, a good one. We'll pay for everything. I already made the arrangements. They'll call you. I was silent, staring at a water stain on my ceiling. This isn't your fault, son, Henderson said. You did the right thing. The only thing. You stayed alive. Don't you ever let what she said get in your head. She wasn't a victim. She was a monster. A monster. That was the word. A person who looks at a coworker, someone they see every day, and sees nothing more than a potential casualty to improve a lie. Okay, I finally managed to say, my voice a croak. Okay, Frank. Thank you. You get some rest, you hear me? We'll handle the store. I hung up the phone. The quiet of the apartment returned, but it was different now. It wasn't empty. It was filled with the chilling realization of what could have been. What she might have wanted to happen. The woman who berated me for not protecting her had been the single greatest threat to my life in that entire building. The gunman was just a tool. She was the one who had pointed him at me. I thought about her screaming face inches from mine. Asterisk weak. Pathetic. Coward. Asterisk. It was a test. A final desperate attempt to provoke me into doing something stupid. To posthumously justify her story. I stood up and walked to the window, looking down at the street below. People were walking home from work, living their normal lives. My own life had split in two. The world before the robbery and the world after. Henderson was right. I needed to talk to someone. Not because I was weak, but because a woman I worked with had tried to use my body as a prop in a violent crime, and I had no idea how to live with that. The rage was gone, replaced by a deep, chilling cold. This wasn't something you just got over. This was something you had to learn to carry. Story 9. My life has always been a collection of hand-me-downs. Hand-me-down clothes from my stepsister Jessica that were always a little too small. A hand-me-down bedroom. which was really just a glorified closet with a mattress on the floor. Even a hand-me-down family. My mom Sarah had me when she was 17. The story was always the same. My biological father was a scared kid who ran the second the pregnancy test came back positive. A few years later, she met Mark. He had his own daughter, Jessica, who was a year older than me. They got married, had 3 more kids together, and I became the permanent unwanted house guest. Emily cleared the table. Mark grunted, not looking up from his phone. His plate was already clean. Mine was half full of the watery mac and cheese, but I was done. There was never enough for seconds. "I will," I said, stacking his plate on top of mine. "And do Jessica's dishes too," my mom added from the stove, her back to me. "She has that big history project to finish." Jessica gave me a smug little smile from across the table. Her project was already done. I'd seen her turn it in 2 days ago. But arguing was pointless. It would just earn me the ungrateful speech from my mom and a week of the silent treatment from Mark. So I just nodded, my jaw tight. I scraped the leftover food into the trash. It wasn't much, but my stomach still growled. In this house, everything was measured. My share of the food, my use of the hot water, the space I took up. Mark never missed a chance to remind my mom how much her first mistake was costing him. My half-siblings, 2 little boys and a girl, were already running wild in the living room, their shouts echoing through the thin walls of our cramped rental. They were Mark's kids. They belonged. Jessica belonged. I was just here. Later that night, I was hiding in my closet room, scrolling through Instagram to drown out the sound of Mark and my mom fighting about bills. It was their nightly routine. His voice would get louder. Hers would get quieter. And then there'd be silence. That was always the worst part. My phone buzzed with a message request. The profile picture was a smiling blonde woman, maybe in her late 30s. The username was Anna Williams 85. I didn't recognize her. I almost deleted it, figuring it was spam, but my thumb hit accept by accident. The message read, "Hi Emily. I know this is going to be incredibly strange, but please hear me out. My name is Anna, and I believe I'm married to your father." I stared at the words, my heart giving a painful thud. A scam. It had to be a scam. Some new cruel way for kids at school to mess with me. I typed back, my fingers clumsy. "You have the wrong person." A reply came instantly. The 3 little dots appeared and disappeared. "Your mother is Sarah Jenkins, right? You're 16, you live in Northwood, and you have a scar over your left eyebrow from when you fell off a swing set as a kid." My blood went cold. I touched the faint silvery line above my brow. No one knew about that except my mom. She was the one who was pushing me on the swing. My hands were shaking now. "Who is this?" "My name is Anna Williams. My husband is David Williams. He's your father, and he didn't abandon you. Your mother left and took you with her." The words felt like a punch to the gut. It couldn't be true. My entire identity was built on that one solid fact. I was the girl whose father didn't want her. It was the reason my mom was so bitter, the reason Mark had all the power, the reason I felt like a ghost in my own home. "You're lying," I typed. "He left before I was even born." "No, Emily. He didn't. He was there for the first 6 months. He adored you. Then Sarah said she was going to the store with you, and she never came back. He looked for you for years. Hired private investigators, everything. She covered her tracks well." My mind was spinning. The story my mom told me was so clear. He was a boy, Emily, not a man. He saw the ultrasound and he ran. Never even saw your face. She told it to me so many times, her voice flat and hard that I could recite it myself. I don't believe you. I sent, though a sick, hopeful feeling was starting to curdle in my stomach. I know this is a lot. But he never stopped thinking about you. We found you through an old friend of your mom's who felt guilty and finally told us where she'd moved. Please just let me show you one thing. I waited. A new message popped up. It was a picture. 2 pictures actually in a side-by-side collage. On the left was a recent photo of me, a selfie I'd posted last week. On the right was a faded photo of a boy who looked about my age, maybe 17. He had a goofy, lopsided grin and dark, messy hair. And he had my eyes. It wasn't just the color, a dark, muddy green that no one else in my family had. It was the shape of them. The slight tilt at the corners. He had the same sharp jawline I tried to hide with my hair, the same straight nose. We even had the same tiny mole right next to our right eye. Looking at him was like looking at a male version of myself. Beneath the photo, a new message from Anna appeared. That was him the year before you were born. Emily, he wants to meet you. He's wanted nothing else for 16 years. I couldn't breathe. My whole life, the entire foundation of it was a lie. My mom hadn't been the abandoned victim. She'd been the one who ran. She'd stolen me. I stood up, my legs feeling like they were full of sand. My phone was clenched in my fist. The screen glowing with the face of the boy who was my father. From the living room, I could hear my mom's tired voice telling the little ones it was time for bed. She sounded so normal. Like she hadn't spent the last 16 years feeding me the biggest lie imaginable. The sick, hopeful feeling in my stomach was gone. In its place, a cold, hard anger was beginning to form. I walked out of my room, my footsteps silent on the worn-out carpet. I needed to see her face when I asked. I needed to watch her lie to me one more time. The judge's words echoed in my ears, but they didn't feel real until my father David called me later that day. His voice was thick with emotion. It's official, Emily. You're coming home. Primary custody, it was a sterile legal term for what felt like a jailbreak. The silence in the house that night was different. It wasn't the usual tired, angry silence. It was a thick, suffocating blanket of judgment. Mark didn't even grunt at me. Jessica looked right through me. My mom, Sarah, was a ghost moving from room to room without a word, her face a stone mask. The next day I started packing. I didn't have much. A few boxes were enough for the faded jeans, the stretched out sweaters from Jessica, and the handful of books I'd managed to collect. I was carefully folding a hoodie when the door to my closet room creaked open. It was my mom. She leaned against the doorframe, arms crossed, watching me. For a full minute, she said nothing, just let the hostile silence stretch. So, that's it, she finally said, her voice dangerously low. You just pack up your little life and walk away. I kept folding. The court decided. The court, she scoffed, a bitter, ugly sound. Don't you hide behind the court. This was your choice. You chose them. Strangers. I stopped, the hoodie clutched in my hands. He's my father. I'm your mother, she shrieked. The mask cracking. I am the one who was here, I raised you. Me while he was off living his perfect life, building his perfect family. You're the one who left. I said, my own voice quiet but shaking. You took me from him. You lied about it for 16 years. She stalked into the room, grabbing a t-shirt from my box and throwing it onto the floor. I did what I had to do to survive. You think it was easy? A teenage mom with nothing, I protected you. You protected yourself, I shot back, finally looking at her. You didn't want to be tied down, so you ran. You used me as your excuse. Her face twisted. You are the most selfish, ungrateful child I have ever known. After everything I've sacrificed for you, you abandon us. You abandon your brothers and sister. What am I supposed to do now? The question hung in the air. It wasn't times, what will I do without you, times. It was times, what am I supposed to do now, asterisk. And suddenly I saw it. The whole pathetic truth. Who is going to watch the kids when I have to work a double? She raged, her voice cracking. Who's going to help get them ready for school? Did you even think about that? I just stared at her. It was like a switch had been flipped, illuminating every dark corner of our relationship. I wasn't a daughter. I was a tool. A live-in babysitter. An employee who worked for scraps of food and a mattress on the floor. She wasn't done. And the money, Emily. That $1,000 a month he's been sending since he found you. That was for times this family, asterisk. That was for groceries. For rent. You're taking food out of your siblings' mouths by leaving. There it was. The final disgusting piece. The child support David had started sending the moment he legally could. I'd thought it was just going into a black hole of bills. I never realized she saw it as payment for my services. The anger drained out of me, replaced by a cold, hollow certainty. I wasn't abandoning a mother. I was quitting a job. I bent down, picked up the t-shirt she'd thrown, and calmly placed it back in the box. It was never about me, was it? I asked, my voice flat. It was about what I could do for you. She opened her mouth, then closed it. For the first time, she had no lie ready. She just stared at me, her chest heaving, and I could see the frantic calculations behind her eyes. The babysitter was leaving. The paycheck was gone. She turned and stormed out, slamming the door so hard a small crack appeared in the cheap wood. I looked at the crack, then at my boxes. I wasn't just packing my clothes. I was packing away 16 years of guilt that didn't belong to me. The last few days were a special kind of hell. They didn't speak to me, but they made sure I knew I was being ignored. At dinner, I asked for the salt, and Mark just stared straight ahead. Jessica, with a theatrical sigh, picked it up and passed it directly to him. My youngest brother, Leo, toddled up to me with a crayon drawing of a lopsided smiley face. Before I could take it, Sarah swept in and scooped him up. "Come on, sweetie," she cooed loud enough for me to hear. "Let's not bother Emily. She's too busy for us now." Leo looked back at me, his face confused and hurt, and my heart cracked a little. They were poisoning them against me, turning me into the villain who broke their family, even though it was already shattered beyond repair. But it didn't hurt the way they wanted it to. Every cruel silence, every pointed snub just validated my decision. It was proof. This wasn't a family. It was a hostage situation, and I was finally getting out. I felt the guilt, a dull ache for the little kids who didn't understand. But underneath it was a fierce, roaring fire of relief. My last night, I sat on my mattress surrounded by my 3 cardboard boxes. On the wall, I'd hung a cheap calendar Anna had sent me in a care package. With a black marker, I drew a big X through Saturday. Tomorrow was Sunday. Tomorrow my dad was coming. tomorrow my life would start. And that was the only revenge that mattered. Story teen. I never liked my husband's brother Dave. It wasn't one big thing, just 1,000 little ones. The way he'd talk over me in conversations, the way his eyes would glaze over when I mentioned my kids, the smirk he'd get when he called my husband whipped. Mark always said I was being too sensitive, that it was just Dave being Dave. So, when the call came that Dave's house had burned down, I felt a cold dread that had nothing to do with sympathy. He didn't have insurance. Of course he didn't. Planning is for suckers, he'd once told Mark over beers right in my kitchen. He can stay with us, Mark said, not asking. His hand was already on the doorknob keys jingling. He's got nothing, Addie. He's my brother. And just like that, the snake was in my garden. Our house was already bursting. Me 7 months pregnant and feeling like a stretched out water balloon. 3 kids under 7, Liam, Leo, and Maya, a tornado of noise and sticky fingers. And Mark, my husband, who worked construction and was gone from sunup to long after sundown. The last thing I needed was a 35-year-old man-child moping on my sofa. The first week was a blur of performative grief. Dave just sat there staring at the TV, a cloud of stale cigarette smoke following him, even though I made him smoke outside. He was too depressed to work, too traumatized to even look for a new place. I tried to be patient. I made him plates of food. I washed his smoky clothes. I told the kids to give their Uncle Dave some space. The patience ran out on day 8. I just wrestled Maya down for a nap and was finally sitting down on the armchair, my swollen ankles propped up on the ottoman. I let out a sigh that came from the depths of my soul. Must be nice, Dave said from the couch. He didn't even look away from the TV. I blinked. What? Taking another break. Wish I had that luxury. He took a long drag from his vape, a sickly sweet pineapple smell filling the air. I stared at him, my mouth half open. I had been on my feet since 5 a.m. I'd made 3 separate breakfasts, cleaned up spilled juice, done 2 loads of laundry, mediated a fight over a Lego dragon, and scrubbed crayon off the wall. This was my first time sitting down. I'm pregnant, Dave, I said, my voice tight. He just grunted. Yeah. I know. It got worse. Every time I paused, he had a comment. I'd lean against the counter to catch my breath, and he'd say, "Tired already?" I'd sit on the floor to play with Liam, and he'd chuckle. "Good thing you're already down there. Save you the trip." He never said it to my face, always to the TV or his phone, a passive-aggressive jab lob from the safety of his stained sweatpants. I told Mark about it on the phone. He's calling me lazy, Mark. Constantly. Babe, he just lost everything. He's lashing out. He doesn't mean it, Mark said, his voice tinny and distant over the sound of machinery. Just try to ignore him. For me, so I tried. I bit my tongue until it was raw. I'd see him watching me, a smug little smile on his face, and I'd just turn away and start wiping a counter that was already clean. The house started to feel smaller, like the walls were closing in, and his presence was a suffocating weight in every room. Then he turned his attention to Leo. My middle child, Leo, is a whirlwind. He's brilliant and sweet and feels everything at 100 miles an hour. We were in the middle of getting him tested for ADHD. He needs to move to be loud to burn off the frantic energy that sparks inside him. Dave hated it. It started with glares. Leo would be running through the living room, pretending to be a superhero, and Dave would track him with narrowed eyes, his jaw clenched. Then came the muttering. Jesus Christ, he'd sigh loud enough for me to hear from the kitchen. One afternoon, Leo was having a hard time. He couldn't get his blocks to stack right. and he let out a frustrated shriek, knocking the tower over. "Brat," Dave hissed from the couch. I froze a dishcloth in my hand. "What did you just say?" He looked up, all innocence. "Nothing." But I heard him. And from then on, he didn't bother to hide it. He became Leo's shadow, a personal storm cloud of negativity. "Shut up, Leo," he'd snap when Leo was telling me an excited rambling story about his day at preschool. "Stop running, you're gonna break something," he'd bark when Leo chased his brother through the hall. "Can't you control your kid?" he asked me, gesturing a thumb at Leo, who was simply humming while he colored. The final straw with Leo happened yesterday. I was in the nursery folding tiny onesies when I heard Dave's voice in the hallway, low and menacing. I said, "Be quiet." I peeked out. Dave was standing over Leo, who had backed himself into a corner, his face pale and his big brown eyes filled with tears. He was clutching his favorite stuffed dinosaur. I wasn't being loud. Leo whispered, his voice trembling. "You're always loud," Dave sneered. "It's annoying." "Shut up." A hot white rage exploded behind my eyes. I was out of that nursery in 2 strides. "Dave." My voice was dangerously calm. "Get away from my son." He turned, startled. I was just telling him to be quiet. "I heard you. You will not speak to him like that ever again. You will not speak to him at all. Do you understand me? Leave him alone." He put his hands up in mock surrender. "Fine. Whatever. Can't handle your own kid." He stalked back to his throne on the couch, and I spent the next 20 minutes holding a sobbing Leo, rocking him and whispering that he was a good boy, that he wasn't annoying, that he was perfect. Today the air is thick with a toxic silence. Dave hasn't spoken a word to me. He just sits there radiating resentment. I've kept the kids mostly in the backyard, trying to create a buffer zone. It's almost noon. The kids are getting hungry, their energy flagging. I haul my heavy body into the kitchen and pull out a box of macaroni and cheese. As I'm stirring the noodles, the 3 kids swarm the kitchen, whining and pulling on my shirt. I'm hungry. Is it ready yet? Liam took my car. It's a normal lunchtime chorus of chaos. I'm trying to drain the pasta, shush the kids, and find the cheese powder all at once, my back screaming in protest. Suddenly, the noise from the kids dies down. I look over my shoulder. Dave is standing in the kitchen doorway, arms crossed over his chest. He watches me for a long moment, a deliberate, calculating look in his eyes. He lets the silence stretch until it's humming with tension. Then he speaks, his voice a low, challenging drawl. "Where's mine?" I turn around fully, the hot colander still in my hand. "Where's your what?" A slow, ugly smirk spreads across his face. He jerks his chin toward the pot of macaroni, then looks me up and down, a dismissive flick of his eyes. "My lunch," he says. "Ain't you the woman of the house?" The metal colander felt dangerously light in my hand. For a split second, I had a vivid image of swinging it, of seeing that smug look wiped off his face by a faceful of hot macaroni. The rage was a physical thing, a hot spike in my throat. "I am the woman of this house," I said, my voice low and shaking. "And this woman is making lunch for her children. If you're hungry, the pantry is to your left. I'm sure you can manage a Pop-Tart." His smirk faltered, replaced by a flash of genuine anger. He opened his mouth to say something else, something I'm sure would have been 10 times worse. But we were saved, or so I thought, by the sound of Mark's work truck rumbling into the driveway. Dave's face changed instantly. The anger vanished, replaced by a pathetic put-upon look. He was a master of masks. The front door opened and Mark walked in, smelling of sawdust and sweat. "Hey, what's for lunch? I'm starving." Before I could even open my mouth, Dave pointed a thumb at me. He looked at Mark, his expression, a perfect blend of pity and shared masculine suffering. "Good luck getting any," he said with a sad shake of his head. "She ain't much of a womanly type, is she? Couldn't even make me lunch." That was it. The string I'd been holding on to, the last frayed thread of my patience, didn't just snap. It vaporized. The colander hit the sink with a deafening clatter. Pasta flew everywhere. I didn't care. I turned and all the fury I had swallowed for 2 weeks came roaring out of me. "Get out." The sound that came out of my own throat shocked me. It was guttural, raw, the sound of an animal backed into a corner. Both of them jumped. The kids who had been watching silently from the doorway scattered like mice. Dave's jaw dropped in mock surprise. "Whoa, what's her problem?" "You," I hissed, pointing a trembling finger at him. "You are my problem. You sit on my couch all day criticizing me. You call me lazy while I'm growing a human and raising 3 others. You terrorize my son, my sweet boy. And then you stand there in my kitchen and demand I serve you like a maid. No. Not anymore." I stalked toward him, my belly leading the way. He actually took a step back. "Get your things. Get out of my house. Now." Mark finally found his voice, stepping between us. "Addie, babe, calm down. What's going on?" "Ask him," I spat, never taking my eyes off Dave. "Ask him what he said to Leo yesterday. Ask him why my son was crying in a corner because your brother was looming over him, calling him annoying." Mark's head whipped around to look at Dave. "Is that true?" "She's exaggerating." Dave stammered, his face turning blotchy. The kid was being loud. "I just told him to pipe down. It was a joke. Everything's a joke. It's not a joke when you follow a 6-year-old around the house, calling him a brat." I screamed. "It's not a joke when you make me feel like a worthless servant in my own home. You have 5 minutes to pack a bag and get out of my sight, or I swear to God I will drag you out myself." Dave looked at Mark, his eyes wide with feigned disbelief. "Mark, are you gonna let her talk to me like that? After everything I've been through?" Mark looked from his brother's panicked face to my stony one. I could see the conflict in his eyes, the lifelong loyalty warring with the undeniable truth of what he was hearing. He'd been warned. I had told him. He exhaled slowly, a long, defeated breath. "You should go, Dave," he said quietly. The shock on Dave's face was finally real. He looked utterly betrayed. "What, you're kicking me out?" "Mark, I have nowhere to go. My house is a pile of ash. I'm your brother. And this is my wife, Mark," said, his voice gaining strength as he took my hand. "This is her house too. And these are her kids. You don't get to disrespect them and stay here. I told you to knock it off." Dave's face crumpled into a mask of pure victimhood. "I can't believe this. Kicked out by my own family." He stomped off toward the spare room, muttering about ungrateful bitches and how he'd never forget this. As he rummaged around, throwing his few belongings into a garbage bag, he kept up a running commentary about having to sleep in his car, about how no one cared about him. "I don't care if you live on the street," I said, my voice cold and flat. "You brought this on yourself." He shot me a look of pure hatred, then shouldered his bag and pushed past Mark, slamming the front door behind him so hard a picture fell off the wall. Silence. The only sound was the hum of the refrigerator and Maya starting to whimper from the other room. Mark ran a hand through his hair, his shoulders slumped. He looked exhausted. The kids slowly crept back into the kitchen, their eyes wide, staring at the macaroni splattered on the floor. I sank into a kitchen chair, my body trembling with the adrenaline crash. I wrapped my arms around my belly as if to protect the baby from the toxic residue of the last 2 weeks. Mark came and knelt in front of me. He took my hands. They were ice cold. "Addie," he said softly. "Are you okay?" I just nodded, unable to speak. He hesitated, and I knew what was coming. I could see the guilt working its way across his face. "Listen, I know he was being an ass. But are you sure about this? Kicking him out, I mean. Babe, your hormones are all over the place with the pregnancy. And you've never really liked him." My head snapped up. "Don't you dare," I whispered. "Do not blame this on my hormones." I'm not, he said, quickly holding up his hands. "It's just, he's got nothing, Addie. Literally nothing but his car and that trash bag. We're all he has." I pulled my hands away from his. I looked at him, my husband, the man I loved, and I felt a chasm open between us. He had a home. He had food. He had a safe place to land, I said, my voice hard as steel. And he pissed all over it. This wasn't about my hormones, Mark. This wasn't about me disliking him. This was about him deliberately trying to hurt me and my child. He stood over Leo and made him cry. For fun. That's a line. There is no coming back from that line. I stood up, my body aching. I looked at the mess in the kitchen, at my kids' worried faces. "He is not welcome in this house again," I said. "I don't care if he's your brother. I don't care if he's homeless. He is not welcome near my children. He is not welcome near me. Are we clear?" Mark stared at me, really seeing the finality in my eyes for the first time. He swallowed, then gave a slow, solemn nod. "Yeah, Addie," he said. "We're clear."